Good evening. I'm going to call the order of the Joint Committee of Infrastructure, Planning and Economic Development Committee. Today is March 9th, 2022. The meeting is being held in the Automatic Chamber and via Zoom teleconference. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda on the city's website for the meeting link. This meeting will be co-chaired by myself, Alderman-at-Large Michael O'Brien, and Alderman-at-Large Melbourne Moran Jr. Will the clerk please take the roll? And we're going to have Donna act as clerk since she's in the thing. So thank you to my clerk, Alderman Como. So thank you.
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Como.
Present.
Alderman Gouveia.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Here.
Alderman Cathy.
Present.
Alderman Clemens.
Here.
And Alderman Tebow.
Here.
Okay.
You have 9 members present.
Thank you very much. Any other alderman that's not on the committee? I would like to recognize Alderman Wilshire, Alderman Clee. Anybody else? Not on the joint? Yes, and Alderman Sullivan is also in attendance. Also to be recognized tonight is His Honor the Mayor. And also we have Director Cummings and Director Sullivan are also in attendance. Also in attendance that may be called up later to testify, but we could put them on the list. Police Chief Rourke and Fire Chief Buxton. Just to go over the some of the things that we're going to be discussing tonight. There's been a lot of work on this project in-house. I think we got the finished project, but that doesn't mean it can't be tweaked. But we have something here that we can all take a look at and make up, potential judgment on whether this is a good thing for the city. I like to thank, people that worked on this. We are very fortunate in Nashua to have such expertise to bring this together. So we are, after immediately the presentation, we're going to go into public comment. And at that time, we're going to hold the committee, by our procedure, rules of 3 minutes. You'll be called up. We'll alternate between the pro and the con and people who are on Zoom for their particular comments. We're going to, again, hold you to the 3 minutes as part of our procedure. If you feel somebody else has already spoken your point of view, you can get up and just say that, somebody has expressed your point of view, be brief about it. Or if you notice the sign-up sheet that was provided to you, it does say pro or con. That will be entered into the public record. So therefore, if you do choose not to speak, it will go on the record whether, in your opinion, a pro and con on the issue. So I would ask people that we're only going to allow you to speak once. I think it's the smart thing to do if we're looking at the weather. I really want to thank my fellow aldermen, but particularly you, the public, to come out on a night such as this. I thank you all for being here. So without further ado, I will turn to the mayor, Donches. And do you have interjections, Mr. Donches?
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for coming tonight on an issue that I know we all feel have opinions about. And I thought I would just kind of introduce how we've gotten here and then turn it over to Tim Cummings and to Matt Sullivan for the presentation to which, you all can comment. But I want to stress at the beginning, I think everyone here is seeking the same goal, which is a stronger downtown, a vital downtown, as many jobs as we can get, as much money as we can get coming into downtown, and as many visitors, both from within the city and without. So I think everybody has that goal, and we have that in common. What we may disagree about is how to accomplish those goals, and whether the outdoor dining contributes to that or not. Now, when you see the plan, I want to also stress that we have listened to the people who have expressed concerns. And therefore, you will see a compromise from what was done with the outdoor dining over the last 2 years. We've listened to the people who have expressed concern about traffic, and we've made some changes which you'll hear about. Also, concern about parking. We've made changes there as well. Concern about the appearance of the barriers. And we have some solutions there, and certainly regarding the length of time that the outdoor dining is out there. Is it really necessary at the end and at the beginning of the 8-month season we had for the last 2 years? But we're making these changes and these compromises, or proposing them to you, in order to retain the very significant benefits we think flow from the outdoor dining. But what are in general, the compromises, the changes that have been made? First of all, we've proposed reducing the season from 8 months to 5.5, focusing more on the very central months when there is a lot of business downtown. Secondly, in terms of the traffic, we're proposing to eliminate the barriers in a number of places. Number one, to the disappointment of some, in front of Peddler's Daughter, because we believe, talking with our traffic engineer and others, that Canal Street is a big constriction point and slows down northbound traffic. Police and fire will tell you they have been most concerned about northbound traffic over the last 2 years. So we've made that change, and in fact would basically eliminate the barriers in, blocking anything, any of the parking spaces, except for maybe one parking space north of Water Street. We've also listened to those between Water and Factory who, particularly in the Wingate in the Cardens block, who have expressed concern about parking. We know that parking is always a concern for everyone. So on the west side of that block, between Water and Factory, we have proposed eliminating or leaving it all parking except for just in front of giving 2 parking spaces to San Francisco Kitchen. They feel very strongly that they need this to support their business. All the rest would be parking, so that would be restored. And in other smaller places throughout downtown, and you will hear more details from Tim Cummings and Matt Sullivan, various barriers have been removed to help with traffic flow and help with parking. And the bottom line is that for the last 2 years, we have removed 70 parking spaces out of like 3,000 downtown. On the current plan, I think it's about 42. So the net loss is 42. And in terms of the appearance, we have a couple of different ideas. One is to just paint the barriers a solid color, something very green or blue, something like that. Or Tim may be showing you some of these parklets, very good in appearance. They do cost quite a bit of money, but you may see that as well. But we're suggesting we make these changes, and I firmly believe we're offering a compromise that will improve the issues that people are most concerned about, while retaining the benefits that we have seen accrue to the downtown and to the businesses. And the main thing there is that we've seen thousands and thousands of people come downtown that didn't come down before. We had a summer intern last year counting, he worked from late May into about the mid-August, counting the number of people who took advantage of the outdoor dining. And he counted between 3,000 and 4,000 people a day from the beginning of lunch through the end of dinner. And he worked 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday. Even if it's half that number, if every person spent $10 or $20, we're talking millions of dollars coming into the downtown. And I think you will hear from some people who work in the restaurants who will confirm this. They've never seen business like this before. It adds jobs, it increases people's income. We have families depending on this. So I think there we're trying to reach a consensus towards a middle road towards this project that retains the benefits while alleviating concerns. More people downtown is something I think we all want to encourage and make happen. If we get more people downtown, that is how we rebuild retail. We need people on the street. We need people coming to the city who can then shop at or patronize our retailers. And you'll hear from retailers who will tell you it has helped their business. There are more people. And as we get more, if we can continue this for a while and people get more used to it, I think you'll see a greater benefit to our retailers. So we want to retain these economic benefits. We want to build a stronger downtown economy. We want more people to live here, but also to come here. So I hope everybody will listen carefully to the plan. I hope you'll keep an open mind regarding the beneficial effects of the changes we're proposing. And I hope we can move forward with a relative consensus that will enable us to try this again with adjustments that should address the main concerns that people have expressed. Now, within the legislation, there is the ability to adjust this further. I believe it says that the Infrastructure Committee and the city administration working together can make changes in the future when we see changes should be required. And we will continue, as I believe we have been, listening and making adjustments that hopefully satisfy your concerns. For those, who obviously have expressed concern and opposition to what we've done in the prior 2 years. So with that, I apologize for the length of that, but I wanted to at least give you my perspective. And now I will turn things over to Tim Cummings and Matt Sullivan, who can show you exactly what is proposed and how it differs from prior years.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, just brief committee housekeeping issue just needs to be done. And so just quickly, communications, if we can follow the format.
Communication from Tim Cummings, Economic Development Director, regarding proposal to extend outdoor dining, and also public engagement process for ordinance 022008, and a communication from Donna Graham, Legislative Affairs Manager, regarding communications received from the public.
Okay, without any objection, I'm going to accept the communications and place them on file. Unfinished business?
There is none.
New business resolutions?
There are none.
New business ordinances?
Ordinance 022008, relative to seasonal road closures and elimination of certain on-street parking for extended outdoor dining and other non-vehicular use.
Okay, and so that everybody knows the reason we're revisiting this, I'm going to look for the affirmative motion of final passage. Not holding to it, but basically allowing a pending motion allows the 02008 to be discussed. So therefore, I'll recognize co-chair Alderman Moran. Can you make the motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for affirmative
Final passage.
final passage of 022008.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Now with that motion, now Director Cummings, please. And this will allow us now, since we had the pending motion, to have a discussion on the particulars. So thank you. Yes, Alderman Lopez.
I went across the room to get my monocular. Just wanted to.
Oh, absolutely. And I like the record to show that we have been joined by Alderman Lopez. I wonder how his little scooter made out in the snow. I hope he's here in one piece.
Analog walk.
Yeah, and thank you for being so gracious of changing your seat. I appreciate it. Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Okay, without further ado, Director Cummings, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the mayor. Thank you for having me this evening. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. This evening, you're going to hear a few different speakers. First, to my left, the director, brand new Director Sullivan, first day on the job. Welcome. And then also joining us remotely is going to be Andy Hill, the city's parking manager. Parking consultant, excuse me. And then finally, I'll make some comments at the end relative to the specifics of O22008. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, I'd like to hand it off to Director Sullivan.
Please.
Thank you
Mr.
very
Sullivan.
much. Director Cummings, Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, members of the committee, and certainly members of the public and the mayor. I want to make some brief comments this evening about the context of the recommendations and the recommendation to pass this ordinance this evening, specifically in the context of the recently adopted Imagine Nashua Master Plan. The community effort really behind that planning effort and specific recommendations contained therein, talking about expansion of the public realm space and conversion of the Main Street corridor into a more pedestrian-oriented and civic space. And I'll cover that in relatively brief detail this evening, but I'm certainly able to answer questions after completing my presentation. As many of you are aware, certainly those that served on the board prior, we recently adopted the city's first comprehensive master plan in more than 20 years, the Imagine Nashua Master Plan that was adopted late in 2021. I won't get into the detailed recommendations contained within that plan, but I do want to emphasize that as part of the master plan, we had more than a year-long engagement with the community talking about what our community should look like in the future. And certainly to the mayor's remarks, expansion of the public realm within our public corridors was a huge part of that conversation and was clearly shown within the recommendations that were ultimately adopted by the Board of Aldermen in late 2021. I'd also like to thank those in the chamber and those in the public that may be attending via Zoom, or those that are not able to make it this evening, for participating in the drafting, development, and ultimate ratification of that planning document. After, again, a 20-year gap, it certainly represents a cohesive and clear vision for the community moving forward. I'd also note that due to the challenging circumstances of COVID, we had to engage with the public in a different manner and also engage with different stakeholder groups that were not often involved in the comprehensive planning process and in processes like the ones that we're engaged in this evening. I put a few statistics up on the screen tonight really to drive home this point that the Imagine Nashua Master Plan that was passed it's the public's and the community's plan. We had more than 500 participants at our 5 critical or process critical public meetings. We had more than 500 participants at our small group meetings that we held throughout the Imagine Nashua Master Plan process. Through some of our mapping and pinpointing exercises, we had more than 2,600 visits to that page and 300 specific comments about improvements that need to be made in the community, some of which were made directly in the Main Street corridor that we're discussing this evening. Obviously, that process was guided heavily by a 20-plus member steering committee representing not only all of the wards within the city, but also critical stakeholder groups and participants. And in addition, at the end of the process, we were actually able to go out to the public and engage in person as we emerged at times from our COVID slumber, and really the face of Zoom being the public process. So this is, again, a community plan, and moving forward, this lays out the groundwork for what we want to do as a city moving forward. Within the plan, some specific spatial recommendations were made for very specific areas in the community, and I don't intend that those in the audience or even those on the committee this evening will be able to read all of the context or all the text shown on this slide here. What I'd like to point out is that within specific areas in the community, very deliberate and intentional recommendations were made for assets, opportunities, and steps moving forward to improve these areas, redevelop, and also enhance them. One that I'll call out and call your attention to is where that small circle is on the screen. That is the Main Street corridor. Very specific visioning and concept planning was done as part of our stakeholder engagement for the Main Street corridor, much of which focused on public realm expansion after we engaged with those stakeholders. And I'll get into that in just a second. Within the goals and recommendations of the plan, a specific one that I think comes to mind when setting the context for the conversation this evening is the action that prescribes that we facilitate public realm expansion and improvements on Main Street to maintain downtown's commercial activity. And I'll also point out that within this specific action area, there are several recommendations that certainly support the action. But there's specific design considerations and concept plans that showed the very concept that we're talking about tonight. And what I mean by that is the image right at the bottom of the screen, showing not only an expanded public realm with areas to engage, to dine, but also street trees, a road dividing down to one lane in each direction, bump outs, turning lanes. All of these things were contemplated through the Imagine Nashua process and very deliberately recommended ultimately by the Board of Aldermen and the community that worked together to form this plan. And so this was very deliberate. I want to comment quickly on the recommendations that underlay this action, I think all of which are pertinent for tonight's discussion. The first of which is recommendation number 1, and I'll read this in case that folks can't read it. It's to facilitate public realm expansion and improvement to maintain downtown's commercial activity, particularly along sections with active retail and restaurant frontages to create ample space for seating areas and/or small plazas. Within that, to expand the sidewalk into areas where on-street parking currently happens, and also to shrink and/or remove existing lanes on Main Street, certainly part of that larger public realm expansion that we're talking about. Further, there were comments on multimodal activity, the use of different modes of transportation along the corridor, and also evaluating the development of protected bicycle lanes along Main Street. Obviously, one of the deviations from the concept that's being considered this evening, we had an active bicycle lane along the length of Main Street last year. There were some challenges with that we recognize, and so we're viewing that as, yes, a long-term strategy, but not something specific that will be contemplated as part of this plan. As part of that, however, there was very deliberate discussion about placing parallel parking spaces as a buffer long-term to protect the public and also bicyclists for some of that traffic within the traveled lane. Additionally, providing bike parking throughout the downtown, again within that public realm, was a consideration that was within the plan. The third recommendation under this action was to reposition Main Street as a destination with consideration for green infrastructure, really leaning to stormwater there, and also other improvements. And that included the provision of street trees, as I showed in the concept plan on the slide before. Again, street trees that will require ultimately the expansion of these public realm areas into the traveled way that are somewhat being considered this evening as part of this outdoor dining scheme. And lastly, when it comes to recommendations, considering parking alternatives, obviously we have structured parking and surface parking assets within the downtown. There are alternative ways to actually provide those assets. And as we know, there are several vacant spots within our parking garages, in addition to parking spaces along our traveled ways. But specifically, we'd like to limit parallel parking along Main Street on key locations where there are quick pickup locations, or curbside pickup as we often refer to it, and where there's no need for sidewalk expansion to accommodate seating areas. Additionally, we want direct public parallel parking along perpendicular streets and parking garages or parking lots within appropriate walking distance from Main Street. So encouraging that sort of destination walking in the downtown area while not necessarily offering the prime parking within the public right-of-way. Ultimately, we developed a very real concept for Main Street that is a little difficult to see here, but what I can tell you, and certainly I can zoom in as we have discussion, is that ultimately what this plan prescribed as a consideration is a one lane in each direction travel way with some limited parallel parking, expansion of outdoor dining areas in some of the areas I'm circling right now where you can see these small blue dots, and of course, additional expansions where street trees were necessary to enhance the public experience along the Main Street corridor. With all of that said, I do want to point out that the Imagine Nashua plan is not the only plan to bring forward this idea. In fact, there's a long history of public realm expansion along the Main Street corridor being recommended. In fact, as far back as the original Nashua Master Plan and even beyond, back in 2000, public realm expansion was a very real consideration. Additionally, the subsequent Downtown Master Plan, Nashua Riverfront Master Plan, and the Nashua Bike and Pedestrian Project that was recently done all prescribe this kind of action within the downtown as part of a long-term strategy. So there's certainly precedent for what we're talking about this evening. In closing, I do want to note just briefly that while the exact design being discussed tonight was not a specific recommendation of the Imagine Nashua Master Plan in the form that you'll discuss this evening, I hope that as evidenced by my remarks this evening, expansion of the community, public, and quasi-public realm is clearly supported by the existing community master plan that was adopted just months ago. And of course, the vision, goals, and recommendations contained therein. In the interest, I think, of incrementally progressing towards that vision, and until such time that we have a fully engineered design and an opportunity to discuss it with the appropriate parties, The proposed enhanced outdoor dining that is being discussed this evening is a preferred implementation strategy to move us towards achieving those goals and recommendations. I'd like to, again, just take an opportunity to thank the community that participated in the Imagine Nashua Master Plan planning process. Certainly the Board of Aldermen for their support of that plan, the mayor and other stakeholders that participated. And I will leave my remarks there and pass it back to Director Cummings through the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So hopefully everyone now understands at least the goal or why we're here in terms of O22008 as being the goal and vision of trying to create more of a pedestrian and public realm for Main Street, following what is articulated in our master plan adopted by this community. I think I'd like now, if I may, Mr. Chair, to pivot to actually to have a conversation about some data. And I'd like Andy Hill, the parking consultant for the city, who's participating virtually, to provide this body and the public with some of the parking data that we've discovered over the last few months.
Very good. Mr. Hill, welcome.
Thank you. For the record, Andrew Hill, Director of Consulting Services, Desmond Design Management. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation I want to take folks through this evening to share some of the data that we've developed over the last, going on 5 months of study now, much of it germane to the area that we're talking about. So I'm going
Excuse
to...
me, Mr. Hill, can you just hold for a second?
Yeah.
There seems to be a
Sure.
question on the volume. Jeff, if you're listening, is there anything we could do with the volume inside the chamber?
I think it's him.
Okay, actually, Mr. Hill, it may be you. Can you get closer to the mic or something and try that, please?
I can certainly speak louder.
That would be an option. Yes, thank you.
Okay. My mic is buried in my headset, so I'm not sure how to get closer to it. At this point, I'm going to go to my presentation and share my screen.
Mr. Hill, on your Zoom, can you up your volume? Turn your volume up?
Could anybody edify me as to how that is done?
It is on the lower left of your Zoom screen. You'll see the little microphone icon, and there's a little arrow right next to that. And go on that arrow, and then you go to audio settings. There's a menu at the bottom. It says audio settings, and you can up your microphone volume.
Okay, that would assume that I'm going through the computer to get my audio. I'm actually speaking through a phone connection.
Oh, okay.
Well, if that's the case, we're going to have to wrestle through it, so let's carry on.
Okay, I am going to attempt to share my screen. Please confirm when you can, in point of fact, see it.
Yes.
We can see it.
Very good. So, Desmond has been engaged to do a very large-scale study across the whole of the downtown that covers 108 city blocks. For this engagement, we actually reduced our focus down to Main Street and the immediate surrounding areas. And I want to talk a little bit about how we came up with the definition for this impact area. And one of the things that certainly informed this was the idea of what acceptable walking distance might be, because it would not make sense to consider the impacts or availability of parking that is well beyond what a reasonable person might travel to and back from. There are three generally recognized resources for defining acceptable walking distance between parking and destination. The first is sort of a foundational work done by John Fruin, who was working for the Port of New York City the Port Authority of New York City at the time. And his work initially posited the idea that acceptable walking distance was defined by both the type of user you were talking about and also the type of environment they were passing through. This work was refined and expanded on by Mary Smith and Thomas Butcher and published in an article for Parking Magazine, the National Parking Association, in May of 2008. And then this subject has been visited again in a academic paper issued by the National Institute of Health, specifically their public access committee has researched this and issued a paper on this. The long and the short of it is, in terms of absolute maximum walking distance for what we like to call discretionary users, those would be shoppers, diners, those critical end users that we're really trying to target with some of these proposed improvements in this particular program. Your maximum walking distance is typically 800 feet from parking to destination. And the two yellow circles that you see on the figure show 800-foot circumferences going out from two central intersections, showing how that type of maximum accepting walking distance would lay down for these discretionary users across the area. The other rule of thumb that you're getting from the most recent data is that absolute maximum walking distance for any type of downtown urban center is quarter mile. That's about 1,400 feet, and you can see that that measurement would also encompass this impact area. Now, that being said, these are to some degree generic and nationalized standards here. We were lucky enough to have some information very specific to Nashua. This was developed through a parking survey that we conducted virtually this past fall. We had a little bit over 1,000 responses to this, which is about a 10% sample of the total population for Nashua, so we felt like this was a pretty good sample. In terms of composition, about 60% of the respondents were female, 34% were male, the remainders preferred not to answer or self-identified. We had a fairly good distribution of age groups. That is the pie chart that you see in the upper right-hand side. And you can see that about 2/3 of our respondents fell within the 35 to 64-year-old age groupings here. Again, this corresponds nicely with the demographic information specific to Nashua as provided by the U.S. Census Bureau. So again, we felt that we had a pretty representative sample. The one thing that did throw us a little bit, although it's not a surprise for a parking survey, most of your U.S. Census data will tell you that the average individual travels at least to work. About 75% of them travel by single occupant vehicle, or SOV. However, among our respondents, 92% indicated that they traveled to downtown through a single occupant vehicle, which makes sense for a parking survey. We had a much smaller percentage that indicated that they walked, biked. We had a few carpoolers and one scooter user. One of the questions that we asked as part of this survey is, why do people come downtown? And we actually asked it twice. We asked first, in general, what brought people downtown? And that is the blue bars that you see across the screen here. And as you can see, again, talking about 1,050 respondents here, over half of them said that part of the reason they came down was to shop. Close to 75% said that they came downtown to dine. We had a significant number of folks who indicated that they were coming down to either do work or that they were living downtown, visiting a business or an institution. There was a significant discrepancy between the number of people who came downtown seeking entertainment. That represented about a third of all respondents, relative to when we asked the question, how many people come downtown seeking entertainment or seeking a special event, the response rate was much lower. But I think that this reflects and echoes very clearly a lot of the mayor's comments about why people come downtown and the vibrancy of the downtown environment here, especially when it comes to people's both primary and general purpose for coming in. Another question that we asked, and asked two different ways, and this is a fairly standard question to give us an idea for what both expectation and practice is we asked on one question, how far away are you willing to park? And this really gets to the matter of acceptable walking distance. Think of this as the expectation question. And then later on, we asked a similar question, how close do you typically park to your destination? This is the actual practice question. And you can see that there's a fairly clear alignment between these two in terms of consistency of response if you look at the two bars to the far right of the figure. If you can't see, underneath that far right figure is no response. And we had no response from 131 respondents to the first question and no response from 131 respondents to the second question. So there seems like there was a good response rate to this. Now, in terms of expectation versus actual practice, 47 individuals indicated that the most they're willing to park away from their destination is less than 50 feet. 68 people responded, however, that they typically parked less than 50 feet from their destination. 245 people indicated that they expected to park within the same block as their destination, relative to 389 that said typically they do end up parking within the same block. 227 people indicated that they expected to park at least on the next block from their destination, if not the same block. 247 indicated that this was their typical experience. So this is a good measure of what acceptable walking distance is and also what actual experience is as reported by respondents here. And it is, for lack of a better term, a very positive result because what you're seeing is that as a general rule, actual practice is exceeding expectation for at least for the 1,000+ respondents that we had participate in the survey. And this also very much supports at least these measures of distance support the measures that we took as generalized maximum walking distance. This correlates well with that. So that being said, that study area that we looked at up and down Main Street contains a little bit less than 3,600 total parking spaces. About 500 of those are on-street spaces. 364 of those are metered. 92 of those metered spaces are up and down that section of Main Street. In addition to those on-street spaces, there are another 1,649 in off-street facilities within this study area. 13 of them are city-owned lots, another 5 lots owned by other public agencies, and 2 of the city garages are contained within that study area. And then there are also a little bit more than 1,500 off-street parking spaces, the vast majority of those in privately held surface parking lots. So when the program was up and running this past year, when we were out and doing field work, the impacts were as followed here. There were 61 metered spaces along Main Street that were displaced that in October of this year when we were doing our field work. 58 of those were lost to the outdoor dining areas here, the barriers, if you will. 3 spaces had been lost to facilitate the ongoing construction of the Performing Arts Center on Main Street. On the adjacent side streets, Pearl, Temple, and Factory Streets, you had 25 spaces that had been lost. Now, 9 of these were lost to the creation of dining areas. 10 of them were lost to facilitate ongoing construction at the Performing Arts Center, and 6 spaces were lost along Factory Street. Now, these were lost because parking was suspended on one side of Factory Street so that 21 new spaces could be introduced along the north side of Factory Street to offset those spaces that were lost on the side streets in Main Street due to the outdoor dining. Just as a side note, at this time, there were also 14 spaces that were lost in the Garden Street parking area behind the Elm Street garage to the ongoing construction of the Performing Arts Center. So in total, as of October of this year, when the outdoor dining program was still running and operating, there were 79 spaces out of service at that time. 67 of them had been displaced due to outdoor dining, 27 due to the Performing Arts Center construction project, and then a net of 15 spaces that had been added back along Factory Street, 21 temporary newly created spaces along the north side of Factory Street, offset by the loss of 6 spaces along the south side of Factory Street. So those are the supply numbers in terms of what this meant in terms of impact and utilization. As part of the work that we've been contracted to do for the city, we went out and did a series of occupancy counts. These were scheduled and occurred on Friday, the 15th of October and Saturday, the 16th of October. Both days were warm, dry, and temperate. Excellent conditions here. In terms of what we saw doing these observations, which were scheduled and executed as midday and evening observations for the 2 survey days here, we never saw more than 44% utilization across this area of the unadjusted supply, the number that I just quoted earlier here. In terms of how that broke down within subsections here, the most utilization we saw overall across the area was 50% utilization for on-street parking, 45% maximum utilization for off-street public facilities, and 43% for off-street private facilities. For this exercise, which is really testing the impact of the loss of those spaces, the outdoor dining program, we used a worst-case scenario. So we looked on each block among all of the observations, and we isolated the absolute highest level of utilization for each segment on each block, and then put those together. And that ended up giving us slightly higher level of utilization than we had observed, because we might borrow the peak level of utilization for on-street parking on one block that occurred on Friday afternoon, and then the peak for the same block for off-street public that occurred on Friday evening, and then the same peak on the same block, but it occurred on Saturday morning. So we put together a artificial, if you will, or inflated projection of need to test the impact of losing these spaces to the outdoor dining program. And as you can see at the bottom of the screen, this resulted in higher levels of utilization than we had seen in the field when we isolated them by the different segments that we made. And this is what it really kind of boiled down to, and I'm going to give this to you from two perspectives. The first perspective is the unadjusted supply. That's the 3,587 spaces that would be there were it not for the outdoor dining program, were it not for the performing arts construction. And the key takeaways on this were across the area, we saw 49% utilization with no block having more than 74% of its total capacity utilized. And then we drilled down a little bit further and we looked at public utilization. Across the area, we only had 52% public utilization. There were a couple of blocks where you actually had more vehicles parked than there were available spaces on street here. Only two of them, and those are represented by the gray highlighted numbers that you'll see in the north and south of the study area here. I can tell you on the south end where you see 467% utilization, that's actually all of the cars that are parked illegally along one side street between Spring and Main Street here. And that's what drives that higher level of utilization. There are only 3 legitimate parking spaces there, but there are perpetually between 11 and 13 cars parked along that roadway. Everywhere else, we never saw utilization higher than 76% of the public supply on any one given block. And then among the private facilities, our overall utilization rate was 46% of capacity, with no block being more than 73% utilized. So that's what it looks like with the unadjusted supply. When we adjust for the outdoor dining, and you can see where the adjustments occurred by the highlighting that's in the white boxes here. The impacts were not substantial. We went down to 3,508 spaces, but in terms of total utilization across the area, we went up 1 percentage point from 49 to 50. And again, no block was more than 74% utilized. Our utilization of public capacity went up a few percentage points because we lost a number of public spaces. We did have one block that suddenly had a few more cars parked on it than it had functional or legal parking spaces. But overall, the vast majority of the blocks continued to operate at 70%, 76% or less of what the public capacity was on each given block. And among the private facilities, there was no change whatsoever. In looking at the 2022 outdoor dining program, which I believe is going to be presented later on in this session here in a little bit more detail, we took a look at what is being proposed there versus what we saw in the 2021 program. If you remember, in the 2021 program, we ended up displacing 61 spaces along Main Street. The new configuration that's being proposed will displace only 45 spaces in comparison, starting in the 2022 season. Similarly, along the side streets, Factory, Pearl, and Temple, your displacement last year was 23 spaces. With the new configuration, that's down to 20 spaces now. We would still be adding the 21 spaces onto Factory Street to offset these losses. So your net reduction with the new program is now down to just 44 spaces and really represents a little bit more than 1% of the total area supply during the term that the program is in effect. This is the sum total of my presentation and the data that we have gleaned both on the impacts of the program last year and the anticipated impacts of the program going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Are you going to be able to stay with us and be available? Because after the completion of all the presentation, some of the aldermen may have further questions. Will you be available?
For you, Alderman O'Brien, absolutely.
You're the best. God bless you, laddie. Okay, thank you. Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So now that we heard a little bit about the data, I think the major takeaway is, basically what we found is we're only using about 50% of our parking supply. I mean, that is essentially the point that I think we want to really focus on. And when I came here to Nashville, one of the things I said to the mayor when I looked at it is I said, your right-of-way is a precious, scarce resource. Those are economic terms. And what you need to do is you need to use your right-of-way as efficiently as possible. And I would just submit to this body that when you're using only 50% of the supply, you're not utilizing it as optimally as you should. You should strive for about an 80% utilization rate. So there's some room there, clearly, to use the space in a more productive manner for the community. And that is essentially what 022008 does. And Mr. Chair, what I'm gonna do now is actually walk you through what the legislation actually does.
Please, thank you.
Thank you. So after hearing the responses from the public last fall, I decided to start the process of putting together a new proposal that culminated in the legislation before you this evening. I waited some time to see if other proposals would be put forward, and no other plans were developed or proposed. Additionally, I did not believe it was genuine to just refile the prior proposal. Therefore, using the feedback given in the fall as guidance, I asked our engineering department to develop and revise the plan that you have before you. So I just want to make sure it's clear that this, even though I'm here this evening presenting, was actually developed by the city's engineering department. From there, I actually asked our community development director to shepherd through the proposal through all the various entities that would have jurisdiction of authority on this matter for their feedback and comments. So every major entity had the ability to comment and weigh in and help develop this proposal. And I have Director Sullivan here this evening who actually took the lead on this process. I know it had been mentioned previously that myself and others may have met individually with some department heads. That is something that was done through the auspices of Director Sullivan. And essentially, this is how 022008 was developed. Needless to say, I suspect there are ways to improve this legislation. I offer this in a spirit of compromise and in a way of trying to move forward. I believe we achieved those goals with this document. But really what I wanted to do was start the conversation and to have this document help focus that conversation, this public conversation that we're having this evening. Specifically, what does 022008 do? So it allows for better use of the public realm within the right-of-way from May 1st through October 15th for a 3-year period starting this year, 2022, 2023, 2024. There is a projected reduction in meter revenue of between $30,000 and $45,000 if this proposal was to take effect. There's a projected reduction in parking enforcement revenue of between $5,000 and $8,000, and those figures are for each individual year. The following plan that I'm about to show you will allow for the following modifications, but may not be limited to those modifications. Partial closing of streets and vehicular traffic, elimination of the street and parking spaces, changes to the parking time limits, changes to the cost of parking spaces, including making some of the spaces free, handicap spaces to be relocated or created. These modifications are to accommodate non-vehicular traffic and uses by the public for outdoor dining. Amendments may be made upon the recommendation of the Director of Public Works with a recommendation from the parking manager. With the approval of the Committee of Infrastructure, the mayor may adjust the locations of the barriers, parking spaces, fees for parking, time for parking, location of parking spaces as the circumstances warrant. In such cases, a new plan would be developed and submitted in a 14-day calendar period. The legislation doesn't contemplate, but I wanted to take a moment and touch upon this. Some other items that I believe are important. One is the aesthetics issue. And as the mayor mentioned earlier, we heard loud and clear from the community that maybe we could do the aesthetics a little bit differently this year. I'd be happy to show you some examples of what have been done in other communities. If that is the sole desire of this community, we could definitely endeavor in that direction. My recommendation is for us to continue with the barriers, the New Jersey barriers as is, but this time I would recommend we paint the barriers a solid color, something neutral. We add flower boxers or something minor to help beautify those structures, because I do recognize that the aesthetics last year maybe weren't as pleasing as they could have been, and this would be the most economical way to try to achieve that goal. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and actually pull up an example of what I'm talking about. So you all here and the general public have an opportunity to see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. So I'm sharing my screen now, and essentially this is what's done in Portsmouth, and this is what I would recommend that we look to do is something along the lines of this, which hopefully you can see. It would be the most efficient and economical way of addressing the barriers. We could do other items we could approach it in other ways, such as what I'm showing you here. This would all take time to plan. This would also take a considerable sum of money to be able to do. And we would need to work, I would suggest, with the private sector in terms of developing a plan that made it usable for everyone. What's shown right here is probably the most efficient and economical version of the few different examples I've given. And you're looking at a cost I would suggest, for just what you're seeing here, of somewhere around approximately $20,000. So I wanted to just give you a little context as to why I believe the best approach would be doing something like this. I would just argue that we would need to do it in a little bit better fashion than we did it previously. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and go back to my previous screen, and also just touch upon a couple other elements that the proposal would doesn't necessarily address, but we would need to accommodate to have a full and robust outdoor dining plan. We would need to update the regulations to some degree. We have a city website that's dedicated to this. The legislation doesn't speak to it because a lot of these regulations under the purview of the Board of Public Works or the Department of Public Works. I just want to kind of note that for the record, because I know some people have asked or suggested, hey, why don't we do this, or how can't we do that? And because we're talking about right-of-way, that falls all within the jurisdiction of the Board of Public Works or the Department of Public Works, depending on what the matter is. One thing to note, in speaking with our engineering department, if we were to place the barriers out this year, I would believe we would be spacing them out a little bit more than what was seen previously, so people would be able to get in and out of the buildings easier. We would obviously space them in a way so vehicles couldn't go through them, and so they would still act as the public safety deterrent that they're there to do. But you wouldn't see them shoulder to shoulder as has been previously. Where possible, we're going to try to do things in-house using the Department of Public Works. We may need to use contracted services. We set some money aside in prior escrows to be able to accommodate some of this. But our intention is to try to use our in-house services as much as possible. Mentioned earlier by Director Sullivan, something different this year. I want to make it explicitly clear because I know that there's some folks who really found this to be an amenity that they were enthusiastic about. But again, in the spirit of compromise, we thought it was the best way to move this proposal forward. We eliminated the bike lane. There was a 5-foot-ish bike lane running the whole corridor. We recognize that, this is absolutely something that we should endeavor for through a long-term strategy, but this might not have been the best way to approach it as an incremental approach. So another item that I heard a lot about in the fall that this proposal doesn't address, but I want to recognize and suggest we should develop a plan, and that's some sort of fee. We do charge fees for outdoor dining, typically for inspections from public health or the fire marshal, but they're nominal fees. And I do think if we were to proceed with this, we should look at charging a little bit more of a robust fee. I think that takes a little further study, a little bit more community input before we offered anything. But I do want to recognize that I think it's something that we should strive for next year if we were to endeavor to do this, so we could plan accordingly. I think now I will just take the opportunity to actually walk through step by step the proposal that is in the legislation that you're looking at this evening. And the only difference between what you're seeing on the screen and what is in your legislation is I actually took the time to highlight with blue rectangles where there's a difference between 2021 and where there's a difference with the proposal that would be here for 2022 and potentially the coming years. So some of this is relatively minor, but does help to provide immense impact for the benefit of the community in the long run. First and foremost, we opened up some parking spaces in the Railroad Square area. We moved the barriers to be running more along the lines of the buildings themselves. I'll note that this is actually something we did last year, but we didn't do it right away. We did it a little bit later on in the season, so it was something that we did a little bit later on, so it wasn't necessarily picked up in the initial proposal that was approved. The biggest change that this proposal contemplates is the elimination of barriers and the extended outdoor dining by Peddler's Daughter. And this allows for the throughput of traffic and to make the right-hand turn onto Canal Street in a much easier fashion. And this one change would have ripple effects through Main Street, unlocking the congestion that does back up, and allows the throughput up onto Main Street, or that turn or movement onto Canal Street in a much more efficient and productive fashion. One of the things we've talked about internally in terms of recognizing the importance of extended outdoor dining, and it may not be the ultimate desire of the operator, but we did talk about allowing for extended outdoor dining on the bridge along here, the sidewalk, and that's something we would want to continue those conversations on. Again, in a spirit of compromise to try to help balance the needs of everyone involved in this conversation. You'll notice the rectangle is rather lengthy because we had the barriers and the up here at Peddler's Daughter, a lot of these parking spaces were turned off last year because there was traffic calming measures put in along here to keep the lane restricted so they didn't run into the outdoor dining. Similarly, we have a blue rectangle down here because there was an elimination of some traffic calming, again, with the idea of opening up some parking spaces here. Now focusing on the next block, you have essentially the Water Street to Factory block. The biggest change that you're going to see is along the westerly side of the block where previously this was all blocked off with barriers and there was extended outdoor dining. This has all been eliminated now, and it's created a various different types of parking. Green represents drop zone, curb 15-minute type parking, and the orange represents a zone 1 90-minute parking, which folks are more used to, or more traditionally used to. Something that came about that wasn't initially part of the conversation but happened throughout the dining season was with the new owners with the new tenants of Sub-Zero coming in, there was a request to add some additional parking on Water Street for drop zone so they could load, and we accommodated that. So you see that here, and you'd see that moving forward as well. Originally, we did not contemplate 90-minute zone 1 parking all through here. That was something we added later on in the summer. We had added in the 15-minute drop zone parking, and then we added in this 90-minute or free parking last year that Mr. Hill referenced earlier in the presentation. We did turn off some parking on the opposite side of the street. We would do the same thing again this year. On the opposite side of the street, really no changes. We are opening up. We heard that there was some commentary about needing access for retail on the opposite side of the street. We are endeavoring to do that. We will tighten this up and hopefully allow for some additional parking spaces in here. But otherwise, no real changes on the east side of the street. On Temple Street, you still have the same type of setup as last year. Really no changes there. In the next block, you really don't have any changes on the westerly side. This is all what was there last year would stay again. Similarly on the east side until you get to right before East Pearl Street, where before previously there was more barriers and there was some traffic coming in through here that really turned off all these parking spaces. And so this year we've added back in those parking spaces. And there wouldn't be as much extended outdoor dining or public realm space as last year. When we get to the Pearl Streets, last year initially we did not have anything on West Pearl Street, but again later on through the summer we did add something in, and we are suggesting that again for this year as well. So I wanted to highlight that. But the biggest change actually comes over here on East Pearl Street, where last year we had this whole area blocked off for extended outdoor dining. This year what's being proposed is actually allowing for just extended outdoor dining on one side of the restaurant here, the quote-unquote Fratello's restaurant. This would allow for parking and also what we believe would be a left-hand turn lane, which would help the throughput of traffic here on East Pearl Street immensely. So it would free up some of the congestion that you saw happen further back. Additionally, we had some drop zone parking back here, but it was suggested maybe the better use of parking for this would not be the green drop zone parking, but a more traditional 90-minute orange zone 1 parking. So that's really the change that's being called out right here. It was used as parking last year, and we would endeavor to use it as parking again in the coming years. Moving on to the next block, where I think you can just see it a little bit better. Really the change on this block, and it's not too much, is we did eliminate, for public safety reasons, the parking space that was right in here, because in the prior iteration, it seemed to be a little tight, and it is not the best way to necessarily, from a safety perspective, have the cars come in here and have them come out when you had two sets of essentially barriers and restrictions. But we did want to try to accommodate something on this side. So what we did instead is we tightened up the traffic calming right in here, which opened up some of these parking spaces that were previously shut off last year. And hopefully that could, be again, looked at as a good compromise. As well as we had some traffic calming in along through here last year. We removed all that, which would again allow for some additional parking to the most furthest south of Main Street. So, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to highlight those changes for you so you'd at least know, with some understanding what the differences were between last year and this year's proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Have you completed your presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The chair at this particular time would like to call up Chief Rourke and Chief Buxton. Can you come forward, please? And I would like you to have a seat. Chief Rourke, how does this sound to you? You can sit in corporate counsel, it's legal. Chief Buxton, I'll give you right Alderman Kelly's seat. Thank you. Thank you for having a good sense of humor, Chief. Thank you for joining us this evening. Chief Rourke, when you get settled, you don't have to, but do you want to give an opening remarks?
Sure, just, I have to press this button.
No, it's the mute button.
So the last few weeks, obviously, I received a few calls on this matter, and people asking what my stance is. As the police department, we don't have a stance in this matter. That's for the board to vote on. But we did bring up some concerns a couple months ago with the traffic flow. And speaking with a lot of the officers that work the streets every day, the congestion on Main Street was obviously a problem. Recently, when they developed this plan, they opened up a lot of areas that were those that we had the concerns in. Northbound traffic was the major concern. And with the opening down by Canal Street, that might alleviate some of this problem. We're not gonna know till this plan goes into effect. The only concern that we have left is one lane on each way going northbound and southbound. We won't be able to enforce traffic in that area due to, we would be impeding traffic, and it's an officer safety issue to stop vehicles on the one lane. But also emergency calls of getting into that area quickly might be a problem. And those are our concerns right now, but again, we don't have a stance on this matter. It's for you to vote on and for the residents, so.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Chief Buxton, do you wish to make an opening remark?
Yes, thank you. I would echo Chief Rourke's statement. The fire department doesn't necessarily have a stance on this. We take the approach of, we were shown a plan, we list our concerns, life safety wise, and we present those concerns to this board, and then you take up your vote on it. Last year, we had a few concerns regarding, as the new plan was being developed, and it was shown to us, the hard barriers are in place. We requested that some gaps be placed in them so we could have better access in the event of emergency calls, medical calls, stuff like that, so we could get stretchers through without having to approach from the ends of the block. Another issue that we identified was we need to do a better job educating the occupancies that when the fire alarm sounds inside the occupancy, we also have to educate them that the outdoor dining area has to be evacuated as well. That's more of an education point on our fire marshal's office side when we're permitting things in this area. And then last year, there was some concerns raised because of traffic flow in the area and response times. But as Chief Rourke pointed out, a lot of work was done by traffic engineering to alleviate what they believe was the focal point or the cause of that backup. So really at this point in time, I don't have any data to reference because the new plan hasn't been put in place. So that's all I have for you at this point.
Thank you, Chief. I think that basically concludes all the testimony that we're about to receive on this particular matter. And I thank everybody for their time with the presentation. At this particular time, I'm going to open it up for questions to the alderman. But please, I want the alderman to take into mind the courtesy. This is actually supposed to be a meeting for the public so that they can express their point of view. So can you keep your questions to a point of clarity? Also keeping in mind that there will be a work group formed out of this committee to a time certain, and we will announce the date. And so at that particular time, more deeper follow-up can be done. But basically, if anybody has any questions on the clarity or anything else like that of the presentation at hand, I'll entertain questions. We'll start with this side of the road. Alderman Caffey.
Mr. Cummings, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Cummings, you mentioned about the fancier decking, and I believe you said 20,000. Was that per deck? So in your best guess, if you were to fill all the proposed areas in your presentation right now, what would the total cost be for those particular decks?
Great question, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely, Mr. Cummings.
We would estimate it'd be over $1 million.
Over $1 million, like $1.9 million, or over $1 million, like $1.1 million? A little bit of a difference.
Yeah, I can't give you a specific number. When we started figuring it out, it was millions, $1 million plus. It seemed to me a little cost prohibitive. But I mean, I can tell you, well, if you do rough math of 2,200 linear feet divided by 20, that will give you approximately, if you was like maxed out, how many you'd need. Now I don't know if that would be the best approach because I'm sure that there would be some gaps there along the way, but that would give you a rough order of magnitude.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions? Alderman Como.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Cummings, I wonder if you could clarify a question I have about the block in between Water Street and Factory Street going southbound. So I understand that we've eliminated the majority of the barriers that were there in previous years to open up those parking spaces. But if my understanding is correct, we still intend to restrict the traffic down to one lane north of the intersection in front of Daryl's Music Hall. So I'm just curious what that block will actually look like. If there's no barriers there to allow access to the parking spaces, what infrastructure will be there to keep it at one travel lane?
Yeah, I think what you're referencing is essentially what I'm showing here on the bottom screen right here where my cursor is.
Yes.
So I will find out for you what specifically the Department of Public Works would use, because what I know is what was expressed to me by the engineering department is it would not be barriers, New Jersey barriers again, but what they will do, and I can only assume it would be with some sort of structure, is they would restrict the travel lane or condense the lane right there. And it's a really good point that you raised, Alderman, because this is really where the narrowing or the restricting of Main Street needs to occur from a public safety perspective. And this was the recommendation by our city engineer. He would not recommend it happen on the other side of the intersection. And so we needed to do something to reduce the lanes by creating some sort of traffic calming measure. I will get back to you with the specific strategy that they will use.
If I could follow up.
Follow up.
Thank you. So I'm just trying to, and I appreciate you'll get back to me, so I won't badger you on the point. But I'm just trying to figure out aesthetically or logistically how we will control that at one lane, but still allow in and out access to the parking spaces. So that's specifically what I'd be looking for, if you can come up with that in the future.
I mean, I could give you my opinion. I would do some sort of heavy potted plants, spaced away, spaced appropriately. Similar to what you see outside in City Hall Plaza, right? We have a couple of those right there. That would be my recommendation, but really that would be up to the city engineer as to how he would want to handle it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Clemmons.
Following up with that in that block, would angled parking be an option? Was that discussed at all? And would that be something that further committee could discuss?
Director Cummings?
Yes, Alderman Clevens, it's a great question. We did raise it. I specifically have asked, because I've heard from this community, either from this body or from the public, the idea of head-in parking. And head-in parking along the Water Street to Factory Block. And I've heard the head-in parking also occurring between the Factory Street and the High Street block in particular here. And the answer that I got was twofold. It's not necessarily a public safety issue. They believe it may be something that could be accommodated in the future. It's more of an operational issue in terms of the maintenance and work that would need to be done to clear the slate, if you will, by destroying all the lines, relaying the lines for an interim step. This incremental approach, it wouldn't be something that the DPW could execute on. In addition to that, when they did the analysis, they found that they only picked up one additional parking spot. So it didn't really seem like the trade-off was there. I did encourage our engineering department to study that further. I believe they would. But it really gets to the long-term conversation, and I would be remiss tonight not to bring this up, because I typically bring this up when this conversation comes up. I would really recommend to this community that this be looked at as a short-term, incremental approach, a phase, if you will. Really what this community needs to do is have a conversation about taking on the long-term, positive infrastructure changes that would be necessary, having a plan in place, a design in place that would accommodate what you're looking for in a more efficient and better way. Because Alderman Clemens, the reason why I bring that up is because you lose a lot of space in the middle of Main Street, which could be used in a much more productive way. For instance, getting emergency vehicles up and down Main Street, or as a central turning lane, so you don't have the individualized turning lanes. As well as by doing that, you could then allow for a safer way to have head-in type parking, because you don't have that, what I refer to as the dead space in the middle of Main Street that we need to accommodate right now because of the way the current design of the street is. Thank you.
Alderman Clay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know which one of the two of you will be put on the hot seat for this, but one of the things we've been hearing over and over again is this is all done just because of COVID. But am I wrong in my thinking that this is actually something that had been discussed for probably a decade or so? This just kind of escalated the plan, maybe not the way we wanted to do it, but it just kind of started that conversation. And now we're moving into what we had hoped to do, either through the master plan or what has been being discussed. Is that correct?
That's absolutely accurate.
Thank you.
Alderman Dow?
Yeah, just real quick, can you tell me the reason for a 3-year plan? I think I know, but is that to keep the legislation active, but also, at least I think in my opinion, it's something that could still be tweaked year to year if we find things aren't working. The only reason for a 3-year plan is to keep the legislation active so it doesn't start from ground zero again.
Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you. That's absolutely correct. And also it creates pressure. I specifically creates the time pressure that this community will really need to make a decision as to what you'd like to do with your Main Street long term. 3 years seem like a long enough time that if there was an ambition by the community to put a concept plan together that more permanently changed the design layout of Main Street, you'd have the opportunity to put that plan together and the funding necessary to do it.
Alderman Theobald?
So one question I have is about loading, right? So not just the big trucks to drop off stuff, but nowadays Amazon and UPS and whatever are constantly dropping off stuff. Now on I guess the left side of the road, there's some areas to get behind stores, like say Castro's the Garden, right? They can drop off stuff behind it. But there's some buildings on the right side that, some shops that if they have deliveries, now they're probably just parking in one of the lanes and blocking off that lane. What did we see before? And are we going to still have those problems now where if someone's dropping off a big load to Glorious Possibilities or some of these other businesses that don't have a back, will it be blocking a lane completely? Like, you're not gonna be able to get by?
I mean, they shouldn't be doing that. I mean,
Okay.
that is not what should occur, and lots of times we have regulations that try to prohibit or manage it more effectively. They should be pulling off onto the side streets. They should be using the back access, the parking lots. Usually two things unfold in that regard. Usually it's more expensive, so people don't want to pay the premium to do that. And then secondly, obviously it's a little bit further of a walk, and so it's an operational challenge. So I understand why these, delivery trucks opt to do that. They also opt to do that knowing the consequence is, and it's a business decision, that if they got ticketed, that's just a cost of doing business for them. But it's not something we should encourage. It's not also something you should really design around. You should be designing actually a way to discourage.
Thank you.
Also like to add to that, up in Concord today, they use, it's to note, Main Street's wide enough. I think Chief Buxton can confirm, when fire apparatus responds to Main Street, they end up parking in the middle of the street so that traffic can flow and doesn't impede traffic. I think delivery vehicles can follow suit. They do well in Concord. I think they could do well in Nashua. Alderman Clee.
Thank you again for, I just wanted to kind of come off of what Alderman Thibault said. One of the things on the northbound, the buildings on the northbound, most of those do have parking lots in behind them. So those deliveries could happen from there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further, Alderman Moran?
I have a few questions. Chief Buxton, we met earlier today in my role as liaison to our fire department, and we had a conversation about the parklets versus the barriers. And it seemed, and I don't want to misrepresent you, but you had expressed concerns about the impact rating for the parklets versus the barriers. Does the fire department have a position on a preference of either or?
Mr. Chair?
Chief Buxton.
So the fire department's a big fan of hard barriers. That's the highest level of protection, life safety wise, that we can get. In reviewing the parklets, I'm being told that they have a side impact rating, and traffic engineering had designed it so that they would have a hard barrier for the lane of travel. So if you were traveling south on Main Street, they would be protected from the ends, but the sides would be open, and that the parklets themselves have a side rating to them. They were going to be getting us more information on what that rating was at some point in time.
Follow up?
Yes, I'm gonna switch over to someone. Maybe I can take some
You
liberties.
are, yes.
I'll take
another
liberties as a
question. Go
co-chair. Mr. Director Cummings, sorry. What has been done to address the concerns of people who have disabilities in using the sidewalks, wheelchairs, other assisted devices?
Yes, thank you for the question. Something the city of Nashua should really be proud of, and has actually been held out as a shining star, is actually this city, without prompting on their own, because they recognized the issue, went out, procured ramps that were ADA accessible, placed them strategically throughout the area. A lot of other communities who are in the same situation did not take that step, or they definitely didn't do it willingly. And so I have heard, and I participated in professional organizations that have recognized Nashua for our ADA compliance in that realm, and we'll continue to do that to make sure that we're doing what we can to be, not just ADA compliant, but striving to be even more so.
Great. One follow-up question, and I'll turn it back over to Chairman O'Brien. I was very encouraged to hear that you mentioned that maybe in year 2, year 3, depending on what comes out of this committee and report, if it's approved by the board, about an application fee or some kind of fee or application process for the businesses to participate in. As you know, we are in a public-private partnership. If we were to continue something like this, we would want to see a contribution to the cost that we would incur. And my question is, have you proposed that to any businesses so far, and have they given you a reaction to whether or not they would continue doing it if there was a fee involved?
Thank you, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Director Cummings.
I have, to answer your question very specifically, but we haven't gotten to the point of talking specifics as to how much would you be willing to spend. We would need to have that conversation. But we have had the conversation with a couple of their operators as to, would this be something you'd be interested in? Would this be something you'd do? What would you need to make it feasible? One of my concerns is just the upfront cost. So not that I've discussed this with any of them, but $20,000 for just one parklet is a pretty big, task, especially if you're not planning on it. So, is there a way through the city acting as the bank, or some nonprofit acting as the bank and allowing them to, through a no interest type loan, pay it off over a few years so they can basically amortize that $20,000 cost? Those would be the type of conversations that I would be looking to have, which is why I say it's not something that can be instituted tomorrow, right? We're going to need time to put a plan in place, how much to charge, what can the market bear, what is it that the community is comfortable with, or what seems reasonable. Will we have participation? I don't want to go through this entire effort. It would be inefficient, a waste of city's resources if we develop this whole plan and then there was no takers. It needs to be a public-private partnership. You need to have that dialogue. This community needs to come forward and say, yes, we're at least interested or entertaining it, and we would like to go in that direction. I'd like to be able to represent to some of the restaurants that if we went a parklet route, this would be the parklet that would be acceptable, because we have, public safety concerns. And then I would need to hear from them as to what would actually work for them operationally. I think that it could be a great way to help try to have a better, more aesthetically pleasing downtown if we agreed that this is the direction we wanted to go.
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, the chair would like to add, it's too late in the process to have anything done like this by the tentative start date of May 1st. It's something that when an ordinance is drawn, the president will assign it to the proper committee, and from there, the input, and we can have that discussion at that time. Keeping the public in mind, who has been very patient, I'm sure they're willing to speak. Any other questions from the Alderman? I commend you all. Thank you very much, because the public really, this meeting was intended for them, but I didn't want to give them an empty plate. Folks, I put the meat and potatoes on the plate for you tonight, so I hope you had a chance to digest it. And I'm going to open up now for public input, and I would like to call first. Well, first, let me go over the rules. There will be a 3-minute window to speak. Do not feel free, you have to take the full 3 minutes. I think it's still snowing outside and weather permitting. But you have 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will let you know when you're down to a warning to 30 seconds. Also, when you come up to speak, please state your name and your address, and carry on from there. And that should be it. Did I forget anything else? Yes, Alderman Moore.
I just have one thing to add. I think it would be helpful if you're a business owner in downtown, if you happen to have the information on how many jobs might be impacted by this particular ordinance, whether it's negative, net, no change, or that you perhaps add jobs. And I'm talking about W-2, not 1099 folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Alderman Tebow.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, do you want to direct the people online? How are you going to call on them too? So
What my intention, and Jeff in TV land. Hello, Jeff.
I am here.
Okay, Jeff, what my intention is, I'm going to alternate the list from pro, con, and then try to fit in people on Zoom. So if people on Zoom wish to speak, raise your hand. And Jeff, can you bring them into the room when I call for it?
Well,
Could you please?
they will see a prompt for them to unmute, and then they must unmute at that point.
Okay, I hope everybody in TV Zoom land got that.
There will be a window for them to unmute.
Outstanding, very good. All right, the chamber welcomes our first speaker, and to everybody in attendance, thank you for being patient this evening. Right now is the public input, and we're dying to hear from you. I'll call first Michael Keneally.
Good evening. My name is Michael Keneally. 48 Main Street, the peddler's daughter. I'm the owner. So I've been a big proponent of the outside dining since we started. I thought it was great. It brought great vibrancy to the downtown area. But I am a little disappointed, though, that we've been taken off the map and not being considered for the footprint that we had last year. We are a very reputable establishment. We're a popular place, and I'm disappointed to hear that we're being taken off the map there, and would like to propose to be reconsidered in some way, shape, or form. With our outside dining, we'll probably just, people are looking forward to this year again, so we'll probably displace, between 10 and 20 people that we would employ for that outside, through everything else. And, I would like to just quote that somebody was going around with a petition saying that we were not in favor of it. And quite frankly, which was wrong. We are in favor of it, and I think it's a great idea. It brings great vibrancy to the downtown area. It brings dollars in for everybody. And of course, we've got to live cohesively together, and it's got to be tweaked. And I'm all for that. But we would like to be reconsidered as well of this master plan. And I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Keneally. I will now call Allison Gill. Alan Gill, excuse me.
Alan Gill, 9 Bedford Street in Nashua.
Yes, that's you, sir, please.
That's me. Okay, he's very smart, but my thing is Main Street does not take care of the handicap. Each end of your street, per block, you have a system for coming up with a handicap, right? You have a wheelchair access. But as soon as you come up, the tables take the whole sidewalk. And I think that's wrong. If I came up and I have trouble breathing or something, I can't. I'm trying to get between these tables to go from point A to point B. If I'm at Martha's and say, I want to go to the jewelry place, what am I going to do? Dodge between the tables, trying to get through, and I'm not getting through. I propose cutting it back, like one of our previous mayors has tried to do. She was vilified. Half of it, tables. The other half, walk. And that way there, we don't need these Jersey barriers. Get rid of them, sell them to Concord. and we got room for a person to go by with a wheelchair, a person to walk by with packages, and you still have one line of tables. It may cut back a little bit, but what did we do before COVID? We had no problem back then. COVID brought the jerseys and brought outdoor dining all the way out. Let's cut back a little bit. Everyone thinks of, take care of restaurants. There are other stores on Main Street besides the restaurants. But no one sees that. They say, the profits at the restaurant, the profits at, what about Joe Schmo over here? He doesn't own a restaurant. But his whole area is blocked off. Get rid of the jerseys, park like you used to. Never mind this 15-minute drop-off. If I want to go to South Nashua from Canal Street, I go all the way around. I want to come out on Old Street or something like that. I go around, I dodge Main Street. It's like a cancer almost. Because I can't get down. And if you come up any side street, the cars on Main Street, well, the light turns yellow, and they block that. You can't come out. You cannot come out. So you're stuck at all these different exits.
30 seconds.
Now, Patello's is leaving. Their complaint is parking. I've gone to Stella Blue, I've gone to Patello's, I've gone on Main Street, I've gone to Martha's, I've gone to jewelry stores. But where am I parked? Out there. There's a word for that, but we won't discuss that here. But that's where you gotta park. You can't. When I go to Patello's, I was parking in back of the old Sears building. That's the only place you could get.
Your time is up.
There is no there is no parking. Get rid of the jerseys. Cut back from tables all the way out.
Mr. Gill, your time is up, sir.
Hey, have a good day.
Thank you. And Mr. Gill, while you're here, and for our friends that have proper handicap placarded plates, I don't know if you're aware of it, by New Hampshire state law, every parking space is a handicap parking space. And if you are placarded, you could park at that space and receive the benefits that you're entitled to, properly placarded, you know,
Yes, sir, but
within
if
that
you're in a
spot.
wheelchair,
No more comment, but just as a public service. All right, thank you, Mr. Gill, for your testimony. I now will call somebody from Zoom land.
Allison Dyer.
Allison Dyer, please.
Hi, Allison Dyer, 9 Squire Drive, Nashua, New Hampshire. My comment is simply that, you know, in the December 8th meeting, the Chief Rourke and I believe it was Chief Rhodes, their comments, you know, as they restated again tonight, that they can't really have or don't make an opinion because they're public servants, and that I totally understand. I just think that it's still really important that we remember that the response times was up 1 minute and 8 seconds during the period of April of 2021 through October of 2021. And it's just concerning, as we know, because St. Joe's and Southern New Hampshire Hospital are at the other end of Main Street. And again, I agree the officer safety issues is something we should be concerned about, because with only one lane each way, as they stated, it's difficult to pull people over on Main Street. So they kind of have to direct either to Water Street or to one of the other side streets. So I just, in my personal opinion, dining and all that aside, I just feel like the emergency response times, and for our police and our fire and our ambulance, and I know that Chris Daywas didn't have any comment on it back in December, but I just still think that that is an important factor that we really should continue to vet before doing any more barriers this coming year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. At this particular time, to take a break, without exception by members of the board, I think and due to the weather conditions, public safety officials probably have something better to do in the protection of the city than to sit here at the particular meeting. So without exception, any questions, are they allowed to go?
Yes.
Seeing none. Gentlemen, I thank you for your attendance. Your testimony tonight was very good. Thank you. And be safe out there tonight, please. Okay, at this time, I will call Mary Lou Blaisdell.
Good evening, Mary Lou Blaisdell just broke the thing here. Mary Lou Blaisdell, I live at 32 Webster Street in Nashua. I also own a business on Main Street. I've owned my business on Main Street for 16 years. I just want to jump off and Alderman Klee asked if this barrier thing came out of COVID, and it did. Thankfully, during COVID, economic development was excellent for all of us downtown. They put together weekly meetings with us, how we could survive COVID as a unit. And in one of our meetings, we voted unanimously, 53 of us, to support the barrier program. And that was 53 businesses, restaurants, retail, hair salons, whatever. We worked together. I've, over the last couple weeks, have gone buying for my business in New York and in Chicago. Both cities have street dining. Both cities have kept it going through the winter, and it's thriving, and it's going to stay permanently. Now, I know Nashua is not Chicago, and I know Nashua is not New York. We're a small city. But cities similar to our size are making this work. They're prepping for 2022, and they're going forward with it. And they're making it work because retailers and restaurants have come together and worked out a plan that will work for both of them. I was going to talk a little bit about parking, but I think that's all been clarified tonight. We have an abundance of parking. My issue with my business has never been parking. I think it's important we educate our customers on where to park and how to reach us. I also am glad that Director Cummings pointed out that contrary to some bad information, I think, that has been provided to some of you and the community, this plan was not developed by the Downtown Improvement Committee. We had nothing to do with the development of it. Director Cummings did show it to us in February, and we all agreed that it looked good. But we're not experts in traffic, we're not experts in police, we're not experts in emergency vehicles. And it was not done by our committee or by any one individual in our committee. We can continue to create a vibrant downtown,
30
or we can
seconds.
continue as is. And I think we need to continue moving forward as a vibrant downtown. One mayor of one downtown talked about it like this, and he said, it's time for some new traditions, and this is a new tradition. We're all recovering from COVID, and I could hope that we as a group can emerge stronger and keep moving forward in our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now call Gary Hendricks.
Good evening. My name is Gary Hendricks. I own Gary's Boot and Shoe Repair on 11 Factory Street in Nashua. Last year when you guys had the barriers up, you put one right in front of my store. I do a lot of orthopedic work for handicapped people, and they did not come. Not like they usually do. So I don't know why you had to plank that thing in front of my store, but you did. And quite frankly, I called the mayor's office, I called the highway department, and I called the engineering department. None of them did anything for me. With concern to the barriers on Main Street, I think they're nothing but a place for trash to collect. They looked horrible. It looked like, Main Street looked like a ghetto. You're talking about putting new types of barriers up, but the question is you've started already to create bottlenecks. So you have 2 lanes going out into 1 lane, and then quite frankly, I have a problem with that because how does fire trucks get through? You only have 1 lane. What about police department? What about ambulance? Every second counts if somebody's inside one of those restaurants that has a problem. So you've created a public safety problem. I don't know how you're going to deal with it, but if somebody gets sick and the fire department, police department can't get down there, then what next? A lawsuit against the city? It possibly could happen. Quite frankly, my opinion, I think you should block off Main Street and make a pedestrian area. Get rid of all the cars. Get rid of the barriers. I'm done. I do have a petition. Who do I give it to? To my customers?
Yes, the clerk will come up and get it, and we'll put it in part of
Thank you.
the record. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I will now call from somebody online on the
Laura Calhoun? Laura Calhoun?
Laura Calhoun, 30 Greenwood Drive. All I know is I don't like the barriers. I think it looks horrible. Most people move to New England for a comfy, cozy New England style. It reminds me of Chicago, which I would never move to. I don't also want the taxpayers to pay any more money for any type of barriers. I think it's pathetic that we've already paid for the barriers and that awful, awful, awful painting of the barriers. I would like to know and have it go on record that if, God forbid, somebody loses their life because the fire or the police can't get to them to get them to a hospital, who will be responsible? Who can that person's family sue because of the bad decision that the city of Nashua made? That's all I have to say. It's just disgusting what you people are doing to this town. It should be a nice, quaint town, and you're making it look like Chicago, and we don't want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cahoon. I will now call Rich Lannon.
Good evening, Rich Lannon. Home address is 11 McGrath Road in Pelham. My office is here in Nashua. And I also own 2 mixed-use buildings on Main Street that are in the areas where the barriers are, that, you have 9 storefronts of restaurants, retailers, a bank, and there's offices and residential above it. So I've got a lot of different uses, different people, different types of businesses. And I had to make the decision of what I think is best by being involved so much in part of the Downtown Improvement Committee and others. I'm very much in favor, and I think it was maybe Alderman Cleve brought it up. I mean, I remember the discussions, and I think I brought this up at the last meeting, way before Director Cummings was here with Tom Galligani. And this is probably 15 years ago, and talked about we need to shrink Main Street. Main Street should not be a thoroughfare. It should be something vibrant. It should be outdoor dining. This is obviously way before COVID, and be turned into, instead of a speedway, a 2-lane road, slow the traffic down. And that was discussed 15 years ago. It never went anywhere, obviously. But before I end up getting shut off on time, Chair, if it's okay, I do have an email that I was sent and was asked to read it if they weren't able to show up this evening. It's a short email, if I can read that quickly. So, dated March 9th, to the City of Nashua, good evening. Brady Sullivan Properties, as developer, owner, and manager of Lots 34 on Franklin Street, is writing in support of the continued inclusion of strategically placed and tastefully decorated barriers on Main Street in downtown Nashua. Lots 34 includes 205 apartments, 320 adult residents who call downtown home. If the global pandemic had any silver lining, it was a renewed sense of resilience, community, and adaptability. Our employees and tenants have thoroughly enjoyed the variety of restaurants and retailers who have been able to implement an outdoor component of their business, and it is our sincere hope that we will build upon the concept of a more vibrant downtown. For years, even decades, Exit 1 DW Highway, Exit 8 Route 101A, areas have been synonymous with retail and dining experiences, while Main Street has stalled in realizing its full potential. That potential is seemingly more attainable now than ever before, with a growing theme of live, work, and play in our beloved downtown. As a commercial and residential real estate developer with a strong presence in Nashua, we hope to see a continued commitment to vibrancy, community engagement, and modernization of your downtown Nashua. And we finally believe that the continuation of expanded outdoor dining and shopping opportunities will benefit that collective mission. Sincerely, Arthur Sullivan, on behalf of Brady Sullivan Properties. I echo that. I mean, I'm in commercial real estate as well. Nashua should be really proud. You go downtown in a lot of cities, there's a lot of vacancies. Even through a 2-year pandemic, 2 years of barriers outside on Main Street, there's been new businesses coming in and out of downtown. So Nashua is.
That's the chair. Hang on. Mr. Lannon, your time is up. I don't know if you heard.
Nope, that's okay.
Mr. Lannon, can I ask a favor? From what you read, can that be submitted to the administration offices?
Yes.
So that we can enter that email into the file for the public record, please?
Yes, I have an email. I can forward the email.
Please, could you see that? And I would appreciate that.
Nope.
Thank you, Mr. Lannon. Okay, I'll call Chris Yolea, if I said the name correctly, of 34 Franklin Street. Okay, not present. Okay. I'll call Steve Reddick of 35 Railroad Square.
Hello, Steve Rudock. I live in Amherst, but I own Riverwalk Cafe, 35 Railroad Square. I'd like to speak strongly in favor of the barrier program. I think it's been fantastic. Thanks for the economic development folks. I think they've tried to balance a lot of needs, and we put a lot of work into keeping those looking pretty with plants. The customers really liked it. It enabled me to expand my hours, hire more staff. These folks come by on a Sunday morning, sit out there. They walk into retail stores after they have a cup of coffee at my place. I think it's fantastic. Thanks so much. That's all I've got.
Thank you, sir. I will now call Mike Susi.
So I kindly ask the clerk to give me a 1-minute warning instead of 30 seconds?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
We could give you a 3-minute warning.
Okay, I'm Mike Susi, 3 Roseanne Circle, Nashua, New Hampshire. First of all, I want to thank Tim Cummings. This is the first time I heard from any city official that this is tied into a master plan. And I thank you for that, rather than the, I won't call it a lie, but the COVID emergencies or whatever. As far as Mayor Donch is talking about the length of time, I appreciate that too. But if we do go to the master plan, it's going to be permanent, okay? I'm not going to go into all of the reasons today. You're going to hear that from everybody. I just want to talk about caring. Most of you are aldermen, or all of you are aldermen, because you care for the city of Nashua. But do you care for your residents, okay? Do you care for the opinion of what the residents say? Because when I hear that there is a vocal minority of people against this, that is absolutely incorrect, okay? The National Telegraph puts it at 80.3 of the population that does not want to do this. 80.3, okay? The commission was 2.1. That was a slaughter, okay? If we don't do this right, I can see another ballot question coming up at one point. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right. And this is what I would propose, okay? First of all, I am against it because I will always stand with the citizens of Nashua. But if you can flip the citizens of Nashua, I'll flip with them. We talk about doing it. Half the problem is the optics, okay? They're ugly. We look like we're an inner city urban ghetto, is the word I heard, okay? We have $16 million in ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan money, okay? And that money has an economic loss track. So all of the money that we've lost for parking enforcement, for moving the barriers, for paying for the barriers, we can use some of that money, whether it's $1 million, to pay for this. 1 minute. Because if you put the cement barriers up there, again, which is very ugly, okay? People aren't going to want to do that. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be frustrated enough with the traffic being compressed the way it is. And I know Amazon trucks shouldn't be parking there. They're going to park there. It's going to be a problem. You can get half the battle paid for by making this look nice, okay? I'm still in disagreement. But if you can flip the citizens of Nashua, I will stand with them, okay, at this point.
30 seconds.
It's just another way where you might be able to fight this battle on this point. Thank you. I don't need that full time, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Susi. At this time, can the clerk recognize somebody from Zoom, please?
Ken Bois or Ken Boyce? What?
You're going to have to unmute yourself, sir.
Okay. I'm Ken Bois from 19 Woodbury Drive in Nashua, New Hampshire. I am fully in favor of the barriers, and I'll give you a couple of reasons. I'm a 7-decade native and resident of Nashua. I have children that are 4th generation, grandchildren of 5th generation, and I've never seen Nashua look so vibrant. I applaud the reconciliation that's been accomplished, helping everyone, but it's nice to see, storefronts in Nashua as well as restaurants being filled, happy people eating, people walking in the city again. It's almost like we were back in the 60s and early 70s when Nashua Main Street was full of activity, very viable people, people sharing their time and walking and smiling and talking. So I just wanted to let the committee know that I'm really in favor of this, and I feel that more jobs are going to be coming to Main Street, more small retailers open, and we're going to build a local market back again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I will now call Carlos Morales.
Good evening. It's a problem to be short.
Can Alderman Como, is there a way you can assist?
No,
him?
it's okay.
Usually there's a way to adjust that. Yes, thank you.
That's better.
No, we want to hear you. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you. My name is Carlos Morales, 9496 Main Street. And my English is not really good, so I'm going to try my best to explain myself. And so I'm one of the manager in that place. And then what I want to say is like, without having the outside or outdoor dining, it's gonna be kind of hard for us because it helped us a lot for 2 years because it's been open 2 years and help us. It's not just the place. It's not just about like having more customers. It's about like our employees. Our employees needs customers to make money for their family, for their bills, for a lot more stuff. And then a lot of people doesn't agree with this, and a lot of people agree with what we want and what we don't want. So what I think is like we can together find a way to fix it or find a solution for it. And then in the place of Casa Vieja, there's we can find one more spot. So I hear about like many of our people right here told about like a parking spot or like dropping off stuff or whatever. And then so I recommend like we can add one more, maybe remove one of the barriers or something. And then so that way we can have more space for like stopping or handicap parking or something like that. And then I think that's the only thing that I can say. And then I'm kind of nervous, so I don't really think about a lot of stuff. And thank you very much.
Senor muy bien, gracias. Nice job. All right, I will now call Karen Bill.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Karen Bill, and I live at 95 Parnell Place here in Nashua. I grew up going downtown. I'm a Nashua native. If you were anybody, you were downtown on a Thursday night, on your bike, hanging out, playing pinball at the pizza places. So I love downtown. But I gotta tell you, the last 2 years, especially last year, if I had to go to the post office and then the Nashua Bank where I do my business banking, I really had to plan it out. And it was a horror show, trying to get in there and trying to get out. And even the Fratello's owner in the paper said that last year the barriers were not his friends. The first year, yes, but last year, no. And I drive by there and there's nobody at the tables. At Stella Blue, at Fratello's, lots of places downtown. So some aren't open for lunch, but yet the street's blocked off, okay? I think the barriers should go away. I think whether we sell them to Concord or we rent them out or we send them back to where they came from, hey, they're gonna be worth more money now because everything's gone up, right? So let's make some money back. As far as the 53 businesses on Main Street that were all in favor of these, I don't know how many businesses there are on Main Street. I don't know where you start and stop the Main Street count. It's always been a bone of contention for the people on either side and the people in Railroad Square. I think there's a lot more than 53. And I know the people on the block, they call themselves, around Factory Street, Wingates, this whole group, Gary's Boot, you know, all these people, they have a lot of real anxiety about their businesses and they're not for it. Just another point, I want to make a point of information, if you would. You guys all see the clock, but the people speaking, we have to keep turning around, so it'd be way better suited up there. Oh, well, I can't see that. That's kind of small, sorry. Delivery trucks, reality on Main Street, people, okay? Delivery trucks own the world. They stop wherever they want. If you don't believe me, go hang out tomorrow. FedEx, UPS, Prime, the mailman usually parks somewhere.
1 minute.
Actually, they walk. I'm sorry?
1 minute.
Okay, thank you. So they own Main Street. They stop wherever they want. They park wherever they want. They're there for as long as they want. Nobody is so foolish to think that that's not reality, okay? I would like to actually say great job to Positive Street Art. I don't know if anybody here is from that group. They did a great job on a lot of the barriers. Maybe that will increase the price when we try
30
to sell
seconds.
them, okay? But I am really against having any barriers for fire, for safety reasons. I avoid downtown like the plague. I won't go downtown because I don't want to be caught up in the mess of it. And there's a lot of restaurants I like downtown. And it's like waiting for off-season when the barriers aren't there. So I would like to be able to come back downtown and feel like the traffic can move. I can move doing my business
Your time's up.
downtown and enjoy it again without barriers.
Thank you. Can the clerk call somebody from online?
Matthew Guthrow?
Thank you. Matthew Guthrow. I live at 104 Fawn Lane in Nashua. So here we are again, a few months removed from the last infrastructure meeting back in December, when this body determined that more research is needed by a subcommittee to review the proposed barriers on Main Street to support outdoor dining. Back then, the legislation was submitted as a COVID emergency measure, even though the state of New Hampshire had waived the indoor dining restrictions over a year ago. So have those subcommittee meetings, how have they gone? Wait, did you even host a subcommittee meeting? Oh no, you held them with quote, stakeholders. Were these meetings even advertised or open to the public? No, well, you must have had minutes for those meetings, right? Nope, not again. Wait, so please let the public know that you're taking another bite at the apple, and this is the first time that you're allowing public input? Well, what about the taxpayers of Nashua, who are the real stakeholders in this city that all came out months ago and overwhelmingly said that we didn't want our tax dollars going to narrowing Main Street for outdoor dining? Okay, so you now have a new plan. It's already been blessed by the Economic Development Director, but it still has our streets blocked off by those clunky concrete barriers that get graffitied for aesthetic purposes, devaluing the curb appeal of our historic Main Street. Ladies and gentlemen, this proposal has nothing to do with COVID. It actually has nothing to do with outdoor dining. It has everything to do with radically changing the landscape of our historic downtown, and the current mayor and our Economic Development Director's vision, it's a vision, right, Tim? For our historic downtown to become a pedestrian mall. This vision will offer little room for parking, a very narrow passage north to south from DW Highway to the northern suburbs. There are safety concerns expressed by our own public safety officials at this very meeting. And this will mean the end of most of our small businesses downtown that aren't restaurants. I'm talking about pharmacies, dentists, banks, retail shops, and other businesses that need a storefront presence on Main Street with parking for their patrons. In this plan we presented, we are losing 2/3 of our parking spaces on Main Street. Fratello's is leaving downtown Nashua, publicly stated in the newspaper that they lost more business than they would have gained because of the barriers.
30
I'm not
seconds.
in favor of this, and many residents like myself came out to your committee in December and told you this. Even though the plan is a new outcome, even though the plan is new, the outcome will remain the same, and this is something that a majority of our Nashua residents are not in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now, excuse me, I will now call Jason Fior, Senior.
Hello, my name is Jason Fiore. We're purchasing 194 Main Street. It's the old Fratello's. I know Fratello's has come up in quite a few comments in regards to the parking. I'm not going to get into full detail, but being the one who's, well, one of the partners who's purchasing, parking had nothing to do with it. It was other issues, because if the parking was going to be an issue, why would I spend what we're spending to go there? I'm all for the barriers. I'm an artsy kind of guy. The picture that you had of Portsmouth, like my wife and I go there all the time. We also go to other places. We've gone downtown to many of the restaurants. We've gone to many of the shops because my wife is the person that you're gonna walk down the street and she's gonna wanna go into every single store and buy something. So it's not that, in my opinion, the outside dining is a necessity. The restaurant that we have in Hudson, If we didn't have the outside dining, we wouldn't have made it through the pandemic. Here, I'm going into the restaurant, seeing the plan that's been proposed, losing 48 covers a day. I'm going into the restaurant knowing, with moving those barriers on the side, which is great because it's gonna help out Stella Blue and everybody up the street. I'm going in knowing that I'm losing customers every day. If parking was really gonna be an issue, why would I go in? You know, going downtown, driving, you know, at night, some of the people have live music outside. What Mike does with his decor, what Billy has going on with everybody outside having a great time. I think that's what downtown Nashua is. I've worked in downtown Nashua at some of the restaurants there, at Martha's. I worked out there.
1 minute.
I've worked there since 1994 for like 10 years. Traffic is traffic, no matter what. You can have traffic from 4:30 on a Friday to 6 o'clock on a Friday night, no matter what, if there's barriers or anything. We have distributors coming in. I've been talking with them about going into Nashua. They're saying, oh yeah, well, you know, I haven't figured out the back ways to get around the main street at the busy times. They were doing the same thing when the barriers weren't even up. So
30 seconds.
I'm all in favor for the barriers, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Laurie Adelano.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I'm opposed to the barriers, and I'd like to see them gone now. I think the time has come to move past this. I'm a little bit surprised to learn tonight that you've been at this for 6 months since the fall. I really think you owed us a conversation before, you know, the fall. Sometime, there should have been 2 or 3 of these meetings going on. I'm extraordinarily concerned about the fact that you're not charging any fees until next year. Portsmouth charges fees right now. If you had 6 months that you were working on this, there's no excuse not to have a fee program in place for those 45 parking spaces that are going to be taken. That's potentially $500,000 of revenue. And that's a lot of money at 10 grand a space. Portsmouth is around 7. It's not fair to shoulder all of this on the taxpayers. And anyone who says that we're not committed to a vibrant downtown, the taxpayers of Nashua, we gave you an art center for $30 million. We gave you a downtown Riverwalk area for $25 million. We put up a high-rise for expanded high-density living downtown. We have maintained our downtown well. And is not keeping expanded outdoor dining a black eye for us not being able to have a vibrant downtown? I don't think so. COVID's gone. People can, in the summer, COVID's not an issue at all. People can be back indoors. The concerns about indoor dining should be gone. They can be inside, they can be packed inside, they can be enjoying dining. And you can have the outdoor sidewalk area. But those sidewalks should be open. I can't run a business on my sidewalk at home without being fined or charged for doing that. And every business should be able to run their business on the sidewalk and the road for no fee. We have a lot of important things happening to taxpayers coming up, right? We have an economy that's really tipped a little sideways here. We have some international stuff going on with a war. We have high inflation rates, and we have a reassessment coming out in 6 months that is going to drive these assessments very high. And that's a big issue, and people don't even know it's coming. On top of that, you're telling us we have to shoulder the costs of this program. This was not handled well. And I feel like the initial data gathering was done such that you knew the answer and you made the data fit the answer. I'm always opposed to that. We have a lot of businesses downtown. You needed to poll all 250, not 50. It wasn't done, and the data gathering wasn't done correctly. So I'm opposed to them, get rid of them, and don't shoulder us anymore with fees. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call, is it Bob Cagney at 204 Main Street? If I get the name wrong, please excuse me. Thank you.
C-A-G-E-N, 23 Hampton Drive.
I apologize, sir.
That's all right. 23 Hampton Drive, Nashua, and I own a business at 204 Main Street. I'm surrounded by restaurants, and they are busy. The only ones that aren't busy are the ones that can't get staff. Michael Timothy's, Martha's, Stella Blue around the corner, Surf. They're packed. They're packed. So anybody that says it is taking business away is wrong. It's bringing business downtown. The restaurants saved downtown during COVID. My business went 50% higher the last 2 summers. So there's people coming downtown. They don't complain about parking. What they say is, I didn't know you were here. But now the traffic is slower, or they're going to the restaurants, all of a sudden I exist. So I'm 100% in favor of the barriers. I can't believe that there's people here that are against it. Virtually every major city has barriers. Every major and minor cities have barriers, and they're all doing it again. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will now call Elizabeth Lou.
Elizabeth Lou, 17 Abbey Street. I'm against the barriers. I did an informal survey myself of the downtown merchants. I only spoke with the non-restaurant merchants, and I did not speak with a couple of them that are in the room today because I know how they felt, that they were very supportive. But the non-restaurant merchants, 98% of them told me they were suffering because of these, of what the barriers are doing to just pedestrian movement in general. It was said that this will make better use of a public realm. And I just want to point out that we've done a lot of work on the public realm in the last couple of years. We've put a lot of money into it that will cost, the future generations. One of those is quite a lot of money spent on the river area. And that is being developed as a pedestrian-only area to mingle and to meet and gather, and that's within steps of downtown Nashua. Only 50% of the parking supply is being used, we heard. However, I'm concerned that I haven't heard any taking into consideration the 366 units that are coming into downtown Nashua within the next couple of years. 366 possibly families, 1 or 2 vehicle units.
1 minute.
Units. I believe also that the question of compensation for business use of the infrastructure that the citizens of Nashua have paid for over the generations. I believe the question of compensation for that space is integral to whether this goes forward. Process matters, leaving all but a small group of downtown business owners out of the compromise deliberation, and choosing not to identify that this group is doing this work, and further not documenting specifics of the committee work, indicates a failure to recognize the legitimacy of other stakeholders. Every taxpayer in Nashua is a stakeholder here. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call Jeff Boris of 16 Hadley Drive.
Hey everyone, thanks very much. My name is Jeff Boyce from 16 Hadley Drive. I also own a small business downtown, Stella Blue. First, I want to thank you guys. We're very fortunate to have you. A lot of thought went into this. It was data-driven, analytical, and you can tell, seeing fire, police, and all of them here, that there was a lot of collaboration. So, again, we're lucky to have you. Born and bred in Nashua, 4th generation. I've seen Main Street go through many iterations. I started Vibrant when I was younger, went down there with my Pepe, and we got scraps from restaurants for our farm, and did karate, went shopping with my parents, At least I think we were shopping, they were mostly yelling at me. But I think the positive momentum we see now is amazing. And so clearly I fully support the barriers. Generally, I think, you know, it's your decision to make, and the decision, in my view, is based on the people. It's not necessarily about the restaurants or the retailers. It's not even really about the businesses. It's about what people want, because it's about demand. And if it's one thing I saw over the last 2 years, it's demand. Nashvilleans are demanding outdoor dining, and they're demanding the expansion through their actions. I mean, it wasn't like a Field of Dreams moment where we built it and they came. It was quite the opposite. They came, we're like, oh crap, we gotta build this. And then we have to keep building and building and building because there's so much demand. Excuse me. So as I said, I travel downtown every single day. I own a restaurant, so you're basically there 365. And I literally have not heard a negative thing about it. Traffic, I mean, my people come to downtown every single day. They get there on time and they find a place to park. Traffic is traffic. We're a city, we're not a town. Rush hour is rush hour. Parking, again, we heard earlier, 1.4% reduction. I mean, if your boss told you, he was gonna give you a 1.4% raise, do you think that's a lot? I don't think so. It's not a lot. It's been amazing to see other businesses thrive as well. We heard from Bob and many other retailers that I know are doing better than they've ever done. And I think one thing that has not been represented fair enough yet is the jobs. Restaurant require a
30
lot
seconds.
of people, a lot of people. It's not like, you know, no offense to the retailers, you can increase your sales by 30%. You might add a person, you probably won't. We'll have to hire 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Couple that by all of the restaurants downtown, that's a lot of jobs. And that doesn't even include the ancillary jobs. My plumber, my electrician, HVAC. Restaurants require a lot of wear and tear. And I think one interesting thing about Nashua is Nashuans use Nashuans. My plumber's from Nashua, my electrician's from Nashua, pretty much everyone I use is from Nashua.
Can you finish that up, sir, please?
Yes, sir. I won't get into the additional tax revenue.
I'm talking within the sentence.
Sure. So I guess I just want to say, the question isn't whether Nashua can afford to do this. I think it's really whether Nashua can afford not to do this. Thank you.
I thank you, sir. Thank you. Gary Wingate.
Good evening. My name is Gary Wingate, 129 Main Street in Nashua. The purpose of my statement tonight is to declare a pause on the vote for this new ordinance. There are too many important outstanding issues that need to be addressed and discussed. There are a substantial amount of letters in your packet tonight. The letters prove that a lot of very polite voices have ongoing concern about two things: traffic and parking. They don't want downtown parking spaces filled with tables and chairs and umbrellas. They want to park and patronize restaurants and non-restaurants in front and close to the proximity to the relevant businesses. They want the return of the 4 lanes of traffic. We need to pause to listen and review the reports of Fire Chief Brian Rhodes and Deputy Police Chief Rourke made in the testimony on December 8th at the infrastructure meeting for the consideration of emergency traffic. We need to pause to establish an honest traffic consulting study and report. Downtown Nashua is a major thoroughfare. We need to accept that. Large trucks come off Everett Turnpike onto Amherst Street. Same with trucks coming south from Manchester Merrimack down Concord Street. The same with trucks coming north from Daniel Webster Highway. They all converge onto Main Street. There is no alternative. They must go through Main Street. Then you have the freight companies, FedEx, UPS, US Postal, Amazon. Then you have employees commuting, and then you have customers. It's a major thoroughfare. We need to pause for business surveys to monitor the impact of downtown businesses. We need to pause and have consultants study and collect data to measure the impact financially, not only for restaurants, but also for non-restaurants when the barriers are out, when the barriers are in. We have 3 businesses that are leaving downtown just this past week. They all reveal parking and traffic were a major concern in their decision. The Telegraph had a survey over 3,000 participants, and 80% were against the Jersey barriers. We put out a petition just at our store when all the barriers went out last year, and almost 600 customers
1 minute.
were against it in the month's time. Petitions at Cardin's, Print Factory, Chuck's Rock Shop, Corvo Insurance, Alpha Graphics, Glorious Possibilities, New Hampshire Craftsman, Daryl's Music, they all showed negative feedback about the barriers and the traffic and the extended outdoor dining. At this point in time, I want to propose that we construct a working group of non-aldermen. It should be a representative group of local stakeholders and a selection of the mutually agreeable mediator chosen by
30
the
seconds.
stakeholders. It should consist of at least 5 to 7 members that represent the community. This group needs time to meet and discuss and recommend. This decision is a big deal. It needs not to be rushed, but well thought out. Perhaps we should shoot for April 6th at the earliest to make the recommendations joint committee. I would be interested to volunteer as one of the stakeholder members. Being a 4th generation of Wingate pharmacist that has been in Nashua for 122 years, I will provide a fair and balanced approach to this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk, we don't have anybody else online showing at this particular time? Okay, thank you. I will now call Edward Hayes.
Hello, my name is Edward Hayes. I own Terrace Lawn, which is on the most contested block, and also I'm on the Downtown Improvement Committee. And so I don't have a vested interest. The barriers don't affect my business. We're not, nobody complains about parking more or less when the barriers are up. It's pretty much a wash. And my understanding is that the barriers went up initially as a way to manage the impact of COVID on restaurants. We do need restaurants on the other side of whatever's going on. My understanding is that we're moving in a direction where we do want to change Nashua to be the vision of more of a place where we stop and stay, as opposed to a place where we travel through. And so the barriers are an attempt to move in that direction. The process that we're going through right now is an important process to figure out where we should change things for long term. And that's my understanding of how it works. So yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Let me see here. I will now call Frank Wallent.
My name is Frank Wallen. I reside at 9 Woodcrest Drive. Short of my active duty military time, I've always lived in Nashua and have followed the Nashua governmental process for many years. I have watched many meetings and have spoken to many of you on an individual basis, and I have always received answers that the majority of the people are in support of existing or potentially modified program concerning the barriers, and that there is a vocal minority against it. I beg to differ. The following is data that I compiled from correspondence received and in your meeting packets. Some of the data is duplication, but it was included to each meeting packet. In essence, you have seen the data many times. Here's some of it to date. On the correspondence you received at the 222 Committee on Infrastructure, 40 pieces concerning downtown barriers, 33 businesses, 7 individuals, all above wanted removal of barriers. That also means not reinstallation of barriers. 1 business wrote in that they were in favor of the barriers. Also, there were 6 petitions signed by 653 people, of which I personally got 80 very quickly, just walking in my neighborhood. And from time to time I've heard, well, we don't believe those petitions. I can vouch for those 80 because I had them signed right in front of me and I know which ones they are. Correspondence on the agenda for the BOA meeting of 3/8. 8 businesses wanted to remove the barriers. 64 individuals wanted to remove barriers. 2 businesses that corresponded wanted to keep the barriers. 87 wanted to keep outdoor, 87
1 minute.
individuals wanted to keep outdoor dining. Of that, 26 stated they wanted outdoor dining, but outdoor dining has been in place now for years. 53 wanted the existing setup, 10 wanted some compromise. Tonight, you, in your package, you will have received 207 letters or emails concerning downtown dining barriers. Correspondence against barriers and
30
expanded.
seconds.
39 businesses were against, 78 individuals were against. The fire department and the police department spoke. Chief Rhodes does not like anything that restricts traffic. Will shut down Main Street if a ladder truck must set up. Response time is down by 1 minute, 8 seconds compared to previous times. Not in favor of barriers, but we live with them. This is from the transcribed notes.
Time
Chief
is up.
Rourke, barriers create traffic issues, delayed response times, and so on. Four businesses.
Frank, there is time.
Okay? Okay, 4 businesses. 2 were in favor of expanding the seating. 1 business wanted a compromise. 1 said, if I can't have, no one else should have. There were 89 individuals, 16 in favor
Mr.
of
Willett?
outdoor dining.
I will gavel.
Okay, I thought you said I had a little more.
No, you have, you're over.
The phrasing was off.
Okay, could I just give you my closing statement?
1 sentence?
Okay. I request to be one of the volunteer stakeholders. After all, I served my country and have been a taxpayer of the city of Nashua ever since. Doesn't that qualify me as a stakeholder? One final thought. Why isn't this on a
There should be a
voter
period there.
referendum?
Thank you, Frank. I will now call Jessica DePortbrand. We'll wait for you.
Don't start my clock yet. I just want to preface by saying that I'm looking around this room tonight, and 3/4 of the people in the room I speak to on a daily basis or a weekly basis as friends, patrons, or just good people in our community, despite our differences of opinion. And if you don't know
Jessica,
the address,
can you make the
yeah,
comment?
this is not what I wanted to say.
Yeah,
I just want us to come together because this is our community and we all care immensely. And that's the one thing we have in common in here.
Okay. Could you give us your name and address, please, even though we do know you?
I'm ready. My name is Jessica DePomfrian. I live at 15 Bailey Street, and I'm a downtown restaurant owner. Many of us have spent the last 2 years in isolation, and our sense of community has decreased dramatically. I'm here to speak in favor of the opportunity to foster a sense of community back to Nashua through expanded dining. A downtown is meant to be a gathering place, not a throughway. Nashua specific, our downtown has been built on the shoulders of progressive and resilient entrepreneurs with the support of the local community behind them. I remember fondly the vibrant downtown of my youth. My grandmother was born at 25 Vine Street and her sisters lived there their whole lives. My childhood was spent in this downtown. Saturday mornings, we would go to Miller's to buy a new dress, go to Alex and Helen would measure me for my new pair of shinies. We'd stop in to see Mitch and Ethel at Martha's Sweet Shop and grab a hot dog at the luncheonette counter. And then we'd swing by DeMontney Jewelers only to be greeted with an infectious smile and a warm hug from Peter Sconsis. The downtown I just described may have existed decades ago, but its essence still remains today for those who choose to be a part of this welcoming community. And it is a choice, because there is a degree of inconvenience when visiting. Paid parking, walking, not to mention the, quote, unsafe stigma that only Nashuans have for our parking garages. I understand the barriers are an imperfect solution to what we are trying to accomplish, but they are a step in the right direction to a vibrant downtown. For those who are opposed to expanded outdoor dining, I pose these questions to you. Before the pandemic, how often did you frequent downtown, park in our garages, bring a gift to your favorite server or bartender, or be greeted by name when you walked into a store? If the answer is not many, I assure you, expanded dining is not keeping you away from our downtown. And I am honestly curious to your opposition and statement tonight. I can relate to your objections. It is not perfect. But I believe the benefits benefit towards a lively downtown far outweigh the cost
30
of an
seconds.
added inconvenience. And I use the word added because that's what it is. Between paying for parking, having to walk to visit us, and many businesses being closed 1 of the 2 days most people already have off, we have been inconveniencing our loyal customers for years. And you know what? They return day after day, week after week, because our customers know the value of what being a part of this incredible, welcoming family means, and they will not make
Time
excuses
is
or
up.
allow any inconvenience to change that.
All set, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Kathy Cotton-Smith?
Good evening. I'm Kathy Carden-Smith, and I represent Carden Jewelers at 125 Main Street, and I do live at 12 Woodland Drive in Nashua. I'm so happy to see everybody here, and I'm seeing so much positivity. And Tim and I have not always been on the same page, but I will say that there's been a lot of changes in the plan, and it looks much better than it did. I do think that one of the things that interests me, and I haven't really reached out to him, but Mr. Susi seems to have funds that are available. And he said that at several meetings. So if he has funds that are available, wouldn't it be prudent for us to look into possibly using some of that money for the parklets that are more attractive, will not take up as much of the lane as far as the passing lane, you know, the traffic lanes, and we would be able to keep all the restaurants happy, have it look better, use funds that are supposedly available to us, and kind of win the battle. I think, as our last participant was just saying, we're in this together, and I think that we need to keep the emergency vehicles and the ambulances going through the main street. It's always going to be an issue, and I'm happy to be on a committee, a work committee, to work with Michael and Mary Lou and anybody else to come up with a great plan, because I think we've made great strides since our first meetings back in the fall. And I really appreciate all the work that's been done. And I hope that we can come to a solution that works for everybody. And I think we're on our way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. You did let the cat out of the bag a bit, but we are forming a working committee on this. Will be Infrastructure Joint PEDC. People chosen from the public will be Mary Lou Blaisdell of the Downtown Improvement Committee, Paul Shea from the Commission on Public Works, plus with his past experience of the Great American Downtown. And graciously, we'd like to recognize Kathy Cotton-Smith, who has offered her services equally as well. So we welcome that aboard. That being said, Jonathan Lorenzo.
Hello, how you guys doing? My name is Jonathan Lariano, from 54 Pennachuck in Nashua. I own a restaurant, Tostado Tapas Bar. I've been here for 25 years in Nashua. And when I opened the business, I was all happy about it, and then COVID hit. And I was thankful that you guys did that, the barriers, because that saved the business. And it helped me bring more the people that had laid off for the COVID. I had to bring them back for that. And I was able to keep the full-time job throughout the winter, so I could have waiting for the summertime so they could have a job. And it was great. To me, it brought a nice vibe, ambient to downtown. And I got a lot of customers coming from different towns to Nashua. And they say, I prefer to go to Nashua than Boston or different places. And so with that being said, I do approve. I think it's a good thing for the downtown and for businesses, retail, and restaurants. It did help to me. I see a lot of people walking around, and they walk from restaurant to restaurant, for retail into retail, and then I think it's a good vibe and a good thing for downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now call Mike Ortolano.
Mike Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I'm in favor of a vibrant downtown. I think there's a lot of work that's gone into that. I think that these barriers were a good response, not unanimously popular to COVID, where businesses were struggling and trying to survive, but you know, it was hurriedly and quickly put together, and you know, it wasn't the sort of thing that you know, was really articulated. When we look for the long haul, you know, my opinion is life safety has to trump all of this. I mean, it's all fun and games until somebody's, you know, daughter or son dies in an ambulance because they're stuck in a traffic jam trying to get to the hospital. And, you know, life safety, unfortunately, in a lot of areas, it affects things. It has to slow some things down. It has to be an inconvenience. But, you know, the comments made by the police chief and the fire chief didn't take me any closer to feeling comfortable that the program that we're, you know, you're looking at now is really adequately addressing that. And that, in my opinion, trumps everything. So I do not support the barriers, and I really think they should be pulled out immediately until a good plan is put together. The other item regarding cost, I think, is significant. You know, as somebody that knows a little bit about business, you know, if I have a benefit of something and it causes my sales to go up and I don't have to pay anything for it, which is kind of like a great thing, but it doesn't really normally happen. Of course, going to be in favor of it. I should be. If I'm not in favor of it, I'm kind of an idiot, right? Hey, it's free stuff. It helped my business. It's like you got to support it. So I don't feel badly about people being in favor of it that are getting supported by it. But you know, there has to be an equitable distribution to the taxpayers. You know, it's like, hey, I get this free stuff that helps my business. Well, you know, there's a lot of other businesses that are going to be affected by the you know, the inflation rate and some of the chaos that's taking place in the supply chain. So, you know, we can't help all of those things, but, you know, the most important thing, coming back, the reason I don't support it is because of a life safety issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Erica Kamar. Erica Kamar, it's 138 Main Street. Not present, okay. Charlene Selensky? Selesky, thank you, my apologies.
Hi, I'm Charlene Selesky, 44-year resident of Nashua. I live at 9 Hill Street. I have 3 generations now in my family that have resided here and educated here. I also work in a restaurant business, but not on the main street. My son has worked for Michael Buckley. I know Rich Lana, and I congratulate their success all the way around. I frequent them downtown until the past 2 years. I do not find that the barriers are a helpful situation, and also from what I've observed downtown is mostly the capacity to be able to drink. And it's the late night situation that I come upon when I try and use Main Street, because it's 4 miles for me to come from work, and if I go the highway, it's 6 miles late night. So I've seen a lot of comings and goings over the 44 years I've lived here, and I've seen the impact that it's had on my taxes. And I know we're here about barriers, but I really have to say that I'd like to hear something that's being done for the kids. I'd like to see a museum in downtown Nashua. I'd like to see something that would bring that type of thing to the vibrancy of raising families in Nashua. And I think that spilling out onto sidewalks as a business, as a restaurant, that maybe they should pay a revenue, taxes on that additional space that they're using. Some of the places have a lot of space already as it is, like Martha's. I just don't think that it's up to us as residents, taxpayers, or anything else to have to take the impact of 10 or 11 businesses on Main Street for the impact that it's causing on the whole city. whether it's fire, students, school buses, unable to navigate when we need to. I've actually have to tell you, I've come down one time to Nashua to buy paint, and that was in Glorious Possibilities. And I had to park a long ways away to get there, but I really feel that I'd like to see all of you put a little bit more time and effort into the big picture. I realize that's what you're trying to do with a 3-year
1
impact
minute.
on us, but our taxes have really felt the impact of all the new schools, the arts center, our streets are in ill repair. I've asked for you to look at Lock Street and stop making it look like a third world war zone. The potholes, there's a lot of things that need attention also, and I really would like to see that happen besides just restaurants. I work in one. I've worked in the business for years. I would really like to see them succeed, but I would
30
also
seconds.
like to see the rest of us succeed. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Danielle, 4 Depot Road, can you save me the embarrassment, please? And help me out, darling. God bless you. No, can you speak in the mic, please?
Danielle Sajelski.
Thank you
It's not
so
that
much.
hard. Okay, I live at 4 Depot Road, and I'm here for the barriers. I'm going to restate what I said last meeting because a bunch of you guys weren't there. But I'm an employee at San Francisco Kitchen. I am a recent college graduate and also looking to go to med school. And due to those choices, I am currently in a lot of debt. Not my favorite thing, but it's reality. And therefore, right now, I'm currently living at home and trying to save up as much as I can. And a lot of actually probably about like 95% of my income comes from tips from customers and stuff. And in my time I've worked there, I've noticed that the summer months were a lot better, obviously, than the winter months. And majority of my customers did sit in the outdoor dining area. Therefore, majority of my money came from the outdoor dining area. And I would also just like to make a point that I see a bunch of people saying that COVID is not a thing anymore and like we should go back to normal. But the reality is people are still getting sick with it and still dying from it. So therefore, it is still a thing. And there's a reason we had a mask mandate for the past 2 months that we just got over 9 days ago. So therefore, COVID is still a thing. And people are still very scared to sit inside and be around in confined spaces. So the outdoor dining does give them a lot of security. So thank you for your time. And yeah.
And Danielle, thank you for your gracing. Thank you. Next name is also pretty difficult for me to read. Is it Lynn Pendon of 125 Main Street or? Let me see, can the clerk help me out with this? You might have a better pair of eyeballs than I do. Yeah.
125 Main Street, Jim,
Was it Jim?
is it Jim?
How many gyms can be in 125 Main?
Kudus?
Okay, yeah.
Just call his first name.
The next one is Mark Harrington.
Yeah.
Yep, come on up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, Mr. Harrington.
Yes.
Before we continue, we've had difficulty in reading the name, but they are registered and it will be entered into the record as opposed. Thank you. Mr. Harrington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am 8 Hunters Lane, Merrimack, but I work in Nashua at Martha's. I am a brewer there. I've worked there for the past 19 years. Within this time, it has been a privilege to work for the second oldest brew pub in the state. I have seen good times and lean times, and I can say that I've never seen such a vibrant downtown, all due to the extended parking, or seating, sorry. Martha's is a legacy brew pub that I would love to be part of for years to come. So please vote for the extended seating, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Ruth Bullard?
Hi, Ruth Boland. I own a business at 98 Main Street, the League of New Hampshire Craftsman Gallery. I would like to say that a lot of work seems to have been done since the last meeting that I went to, and the plan that I'm seeing now is, seems to be much improved. A couple of things that were mentioned, but that I want to support is using a fee to use the space. Regardless of paying for whatever it might cost, I think you need to, if it's free, yes, I want it. Why would you not? So there needs to be a fee so that only the people that are actually going to use it, use it. Next to me is the Mexican restaurant that the manager spoke from earlier. Their seating extends in front of my business. And I am open during business hours. I'm open from 10 to 5. There's no one sitting there. The first year, I was in favor of outdoor dining, absolutely. It was vibrant, there were people there, it was exciting. And last year, there was no one there during the day. They're open for lunch. And it's depressing, and I don't want them in front of my business. I think that you should only be able to have outdoor dining in front of your own business. Next to me is Glorious Possibilities. Last year, we didn't even have the 15-minute space. It disappeared. I see on this, we have one space. So in that, from 92 to 100 Main, there's two restaurants, a bank, my gallery, and then 100 Main Street, which is an entrance to 2 other businesses. And this plan shows one 15-minute spot. I think maybe if the dining ended at the end of the Mexican restaurant, we could have 2 or 3 spots. You heard that manager say.
1 minute.
You could use up one of his spots. I also wanted to mention on a related subject, I don't know if everybody is aware, but there was an experiment done this year for a parking app. And on my part of Main Street, you have to use a parking app. Or you can go find a parking kiosk somewhere else. You have to walk down the street to a crosswalk, cross the street.
30 seconds.
Go another half block to get a parking ticket and then go back to your car. That's if you know where the parking kiosk is. Not everybody can use a parking app. They don't know how to add an app. I've had so many people walk in and ask what they're supposed to do and turn around and leave. Or say, okay, I'll make it quick. Mine is a browsing business. I don't want you to make it quick. So those are the 2 things I wanted to mention. I'm thrilled to be in downtown Nashua. I've been there for 12 years. I know we're having a difference of opinion. There's a lot of passion, but I think that we can all come together with a compromise, and I do appreciate all the work that's being done. And please paint the barriers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now call Tanya Brassi of 23 Bowers Street.
Tanya Barry. 23 Bowers Street. I've been the GM of Martha's Exchange for 3 years now, and I've fully experienced the ups and downs of what COVID has done to my staff, as well as the business and what the expanded outdoor dining has brought to the community. I'm going to start off with an example from a post on something we posted on Facebook a little while back. This person, I don't believe, was a Nashua regular, someone who had just come to Nashua to check out the area because they had heard about outdoor dining. We love the festive atmosphere on Main Street, and we even shopped at the local stores while waiting for an outdoor table. We have created what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, when people come in and they're looking for dining, we're full, we take their phone number, we say, please enjoy, go ahead, wander around, check out the different shops, enjoy yourself. We will give you a call as soon as your table is ready. People love this. And if they find another place, another restaurant to go, that's not what we ideally would like, but we're promoting the entire downtown. This comment alone is one out of hundreds, thousands of comments that I've gotten through social media, emails, in person over the past 2 years. I've frequented many downtown communities, Manchester, Concord, Newburyport, for example. The difference that I feel that those communities have that we don't, and this has been talked about many times tonight, is that they're pedestrian friendly. They're enticing for people to come and walk around, whether it's for a few hours or for the entire day. Shopping, just window shopping, dining, enjoying the few months a year that we get to be outdoors in the sun and warmth. They've created larger sidewalks and one-lane traffic. Their Main Street community is not based on vehicle traffic flow. It is about pedestrian traffic flow and the vibrancy that brings people from all over to enjoy all of the businesses. In my opinion, if we can move Nashua forward to focus on something along those lines, we can move forward and flourish as these other communities have. My second point is that people are saying COVID is over. It's only been 3 weeks since the mask mandate went away. We are still trying to recover from two of the slowest and longest winter seasons that we have endured. Along with the rise in cost of food, paper goods, housing, living costs in general, my staff and business have not come close to recovering financially from 2 of those years. The promise of the expanded dining is what has kept all of us going, knowing that in a few short months, we'll be able to make up a little bit of what we have lost.
30
So
seconds.
Please encourage moving forward with outdoor dining. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Jovat, 34 Franklin Street. Barbara of 34 Franklin Street. Okay, Barbara seems not to be present. She's listed as opposed, which would be entered into the record. Dave Pothier.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Pothier. I own Wilfred's Barbershop at 90 West Pearl Street. A couple points that I just wanted to bring up. I'm all for the restaurants bringing in people and having outdoor seating. But for the barriers, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that it restricts time flow. I work off of appointments. And a lot of my customers happen to be late or can't find parking. There's tons of construction going on. Goes for chiropractors. Anyone that's doing appointments is where I've heard the biggest complaints. I've heard that people try to stay away from downtown because of the traffic and not being able to get to their destination. There's a lot of bad comments of how much of a cluster it is, that it's hindering, that they have to avoid downtown and try to find other ways around, which is fine if there's people that live in Nashua and know these areas, but a lot of my customers come from out of state over the Mass border, so for them to know these little secrets and ways to avoid the downtown traffic, that's something that is a good point that everyone should know. I also feel like with these times coming up, with what's going on overseas, I would like to make sure that my customers can come and visit my business as easily and without any restrictions, because I feel that
1 minute.
entertainment and such things might be on the back burner coming up in the next few months with inflation and prices going up for everything. I just think that's a huge concern, and I would like to make sure that my customers can visit my business and I could provide for my family. That's it.
Thank you. I'll call Lee Bowley.
Lee Bowley from 29 Burnside Street here in Nashua. I spent 21 years in the Air Force, and I have a lot of respect for authority, but not when it comes to this. One of the things that I am for is outdoor dining. Blocking the streets, I am so against. I traveled up and down Main Street 4 times a day, and more times than not, it's faster for me to get on the highway and go down, get off at exit 4, and then do what I have to do and wiggle through the streets. One of the things I haven't heard anybody say tonight is the lack of police presence. Every single night that I went downtown last year, there were 3 little wannabe thugs riding up and down the street. The same 3 on their bicycles every night, knocking down the little walkway barriers that they had set up that I guess they're not going to do this year, riding down, popping wheelies in the middle of the road against traffic, called the police several times, never saw any response, ate dinner down there many times because I want to support the local businesses that we have. But not to be yelled at by these kids that are riding around on their bicycles, not to be put in a situation where I can't hear who I'm talking with at the same table because we've got the motorcycles, and I ride a motorcycle, that drive up and down, up and down, up and down Main Street with their radios blaring, or the cars doing the same thing. I don't think that the numbers lie about the 80% of the citizens of Nashua not wanting the barriers. So I think we can have outdoor dining without blocking up the streets. I think the police need to make more presence. We have police officers on bicycles. I never saw one last time. Oh, that's not true. I did see one sitting on the corner of Canal Street. So there's like no adult supervision down there. So people do what they want to do.
30 seconds.
And I just think that this is, the people that really want this are the restaurant owners and some of the retailers, because money speaks. I also think that this decision's already been made and that this meeting is probably moot. I don't think any of us are going to get, really have any say in this not happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the information to the Board of Aldermen, this concludes everybody that was in opposition. The remaining 9 speakers are in pro. Does not mean that we don't want to hear from you, but the hour at hand is about a little after 10. If you want your 3 minutes, you will get your 3 minutes. But if something was already said that you agree, please just step to the mic and say that you agree in support, and we consider that part of the testimony. So with that being said, I will now call Alec Philibrown.
It's a little short. Hello, my name is Alec Philibrown. I live off of Wasson Road in Hudson. I am a server and a bartender at Martha's Exchange off of Main Street, and I am in favor of outdoor dining. When the weather is great, people don't want to be stuck inside all day. They would rather sit outside and enjoy the weather. We should encourage people to be outside and walk down Main Street, because if they're walking rather than driving, they're more likely to walk right inside of a business rather than drive around for a little bit and try and find parking. Even if restaurants are at 100% capacity, if that's not what people want to do, they're not going to go dine inside. If we do not extend outdoor dining this year, people will find another city that has more outdoor dining options, and we will be missing out on a sizable influx to our city's economy. I may not live in the city of Nashua itself, but I have come to see this city as my own, and I would like to see it prosper and flourish. Thank you for your time.
And I thank you. Amanda Boucher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amanda Boucher, and I live at 37 Cortlandt Street. I've worked as a server and bartender at Martha's Exchange for the past 2 years. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of keeping the extended outdoor dining. When outdoor dining first reopened in the spring of 2020, I saw how busy the restaurants on Main Street were and decided to apply at Martha's. I'm a single mom and a teacher, and I need to supplement my income for myself and my daughter. Unfortunately, the cost of living is so high, and my teacher's salary doesn't cut it. This is only going to get worse with the direction our economy is headed in. Because I have a teacher schedule, the extended outdoor dining in the summer is when I can work more shifts and make most of my money. There just simply isn't any comparison to the money I've made while working at Martha's during the busy, nice weather months. The majority of people have been isolated and facing some sort of negative impact of the pandemic for 2 years now. With that said, customers want to be outside, whether it is to grab a quick lunch on a work break or just listen to music on a weekend night out with family and friends. I know many can agree that creative solutions such as added outdoor dining experiences have been some of the few positive effects of the pandemic. My story is only one of the many employees that work on Main Street and rely on the added income the extended dining has provided. I hope the board hears our stories and strongly considers keeping the extra outdoor dining for the sake of the community. Thank you.
I thank you. Tara Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tara Peters. I live at 8 Strawberry Bank Road in Nashua, and I am the Assistant General Manager at Martha's Exchange. I've been working there for about 3 years now. I've been in the service industry for 8 years, and I really want to stress the fact that the last 2 years have been such a major shift for many businesses alike. I myself and many of our employees have struggled during the pandemic. The winter months, the slow months, the takeout and delivery only months, and the expanded outdoor dining scene was our saving grace. We're really hoping that we can continue to have the expansion because it is very lucrative to our business itself and our many employees. I have seen some arguments being made about how our businesses have operated just fine in the past without the expansion, and while that may be true, we have to remember that we are still dealing with the adverse effects from the pandemic, and it's going to take a lot longer than just 2 summers for all of us to come back from our struggles. Please consider letting Main Street continue to have the expanded outdoor dining, and please think of all the businesses, employees, and in turn, their families that this is affecting. Thank you.
Thank you. Lena Gomez?
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I'm Lena Gomez from 262 Lake Street, and I'm the owner of San Francisco Kitchen. I'm going to make it short because everybody has said pretty much what I wanted to say. I am in favor of the extended dining area for 2 main reasons. It brings a lot of customers to Main Street. It makes it vibrant, beautiful, live. People laugh, people enjoy having a dinner outside and enjoy the sun. And then the second reason is financially. It brings a lot of business. I can provide for the family. We struggle during the winter months, so during the summer, it just increases sales, not only for myself, but also for the employees, and it's better outcome in a positive way. I have seen the layout that was proposed, and my husband, he is a firefighter in the Air Force, and he would agree that his main goal is to arrive at his destination as soon as possible. But I am very confident that the new layout is run not only by one person, but by the police department, the fire department, and if they were against it, they would probably already have said something or brought the major concerns out. So I'm hoping that we can come into a compromise. The plan looks in favor of everybody. There's more parking spaces, and yet we still have the dining area being offered. I just hope we can come up with a solution so much harassment and intimidation can stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben Fisher?
How's it going? My name's Ben Fisher. I've tended bar at San Francisco Kitchen for 15 years. I've always maintained shifts at other places too. And I currently do about 3 or 4 nights a week down at a bar across from the TD Garden in Boston. And so when a lot of people bring up the financial reasons for extending the outdoor seating, I want everyone to think less in terms of greed and more in terms of need. Even down there across from the Garden, which is one of the biggest venues in New England, the numbers are not the same. Even after the mask mandate went away, even after the vaccine mandate, it's not quite what it used to be. Another or another reason rather. When I was working in Manchester, I made a lot of friends. I worked up there for about 5 years. The past 2 summers that I've gone up and visited people, it was the first time some of my friends up there would mention Nashua as a destination, which I think speaks to what the mayor first brought up as far as bringing people down here or up here. The only other time they would really come is the holiday stroll. That's what they knew it as, the holiday stroll. But throughout the summer months at night, it's kind of where they went. Ideally, I'd love to see a compromise where, you know, parking does help everybody. I love, you know, Dave's business. When I lived closer, I would go to him. So compromise would be best, but I guess in a nutshell, if people could think less in terms of greed and more in terms of need for owners and employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Billy Focus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of people have stole my thunder. Thanks for calling me a little later on.
I was trying to save the best for last.
Ah, okay, we're saving Mr. Buckley for that, I imagine. My name is Billy Focus. I've owned and operated Martha's Exchange for the past 35 years. My parents also ran a candy shop and a luncheonette in that same spot for 35 years prior to that. Needless to say, I've spent 62 years working and living on Main Street. I know, my father started me young. I've seen an awful lot of changes. Opening in the mid-'80s, downtown was desolate. Some of you recall those times, some of you don't. Places like Sears, Montgomery Wards, and a number of the other stores started to migrate towards the malls. This was a problem for downtown. In the 90s, Michael Buckley had the ambition to open Michael Timothy's, kind of diagonal from us. Then he opened up Surf, and that also helped revitalize downtown. There are other longtime businesses who stuck it out who are also here today and contributed to the revitalization of downtown. With this said, the expanded dining is like nothing I've witnessed before. Again, being downtown has become vibrant and the feeling is electric. Watching people dine, stroll, find different shops, see the different things that we have to offer in downtown, I think it's very, very important. It's important to keep the momentum going forward. The increased number of diners, money from out of town states helps to improve the city's economy, not only just by dining, because we don't want to be selfish. We want to be fair to all businesses. We did, I appreciate Director Cummings in the compromise. We've seen parking being changed. We've seen the 8 to 5.5 months. Again, a lot of this that I was going to say, I don't want to reiterate.
30
in closing, I'm not sure how much time I have left on Main Street, but this isn't about me. This isn't about Martha's Exchange. This is about growth in our city and the betterment in our entire city to move forward. Thank you, and I hope you consider keeping the barriers.
Thank you. Michael Buckley.
Bill's the best. Michael Buckley owns.
Michael, it does if you tilt it up on the axis, it might make it. No, I'm talking the arm itself.
I think that's good.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So I'm Michael Buckley. I own Surf, an MT's local on Main Street. I employ over 100 people downtown. Let me start by saying I understand some of the frustrations regarding the barriers and have tried to remain respectful of the different opinions and points of view. But in the end, I believe we all want the same thing. And with some work and compromise, we can move the downtown forward, creating quality of life and opportunity for all of Nashua. I think we learned a lot from last year, and with modifications, we could find a model more suitable for most of the restaurants and merchants in the downtown. I think we also learned a lot in the last 2 years about what could be. Downtowns are changing, and what was a successful model 50 years ago certainly isn't the case now. When Nashua came to the rescue of its restaurant community, there was an unexpected revelation. With so many people dining on the street, there was an unmistakable vibe, and energy better than anything we had seen before. I think that's what made the light bulb go off. The future of downtowns, not just in Nashua, but in many cities throughout the nation, its culture in residential coupled with shops and services. And culture is what leads the way. Restaurants, bars, and interesting things to see and do are what drives people to want to live in an urban setting. Nashua has a good start regarding dining, nightlife, and shops. And with the approaching Center for the Arts, there is truly a bright future for our downtown. It's really very simple. You're either moving forward or you're going backward, because there is no such thing as staying the same. I am in favor of spending a year working with a hybrid model to see how we can improve logistics of outside dining. Here are some of my thoughts. First, reinstate the 4 lanes of traffic by removing the bike lane. This would make it easier for emergency services and ease traffic congestion. Second, I would associate a fee, maybe based on linear feet or perhaps by the gained seats. Hypothetically, say a restaurant adds 30 seats and there is a $50 permit charge per seat for extended seating. The city would net $1,500. This would do 2 things: defray some of the costs associated with the barriers and put back some of the parking revenues. Secondly, it would eliminate the restaurants who don't fully utilize them. A true free market solution.
30 seconds.
Third, I think we should keep more spaces open in front of individual retail establishments so there is parking for their customers. Last, we could find more parking on some of the side streets, which I think is something Tim Cummings has already identified. I believe that the cities and businesses in them must work together to create a positive space for all its residents. And it has always been my point of view that the downtown is the face of your city. When people visit it, they form an instant opinion of what that community is like. My motives are solely in the interest of making the downtown a place where businesses can be more successful, or we will continue to lose them to commercial corridors or lack of confidence. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Bill Provost.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Bill Provost. I live at
Mr. Provost, if you can tilt the mic maybe to it, yeah.
Right here.
There you go. Yes, sir.
Okay. My name is Bill Provost. I live at 1 Clock Tower Place, and I'm a proprietor at Oddfellows Brewing Company at 124 and 130 Main Street. Appreciate the opportunity to share some observations. First, I was very impressed with the proposal. I thought a lot of work it is apparent that a lot of work had gone into it, and sincere attempts to address some of the concerns have been made. Just a few observations of my own. A few years ago, I was standing out in front of our restaurant, and it was late afternoon, it was a nice day, and there were cars just up and down Main Street, but the restaurant seemed empty, and there were very few people walking. It just seemed like it was not really a raceway, it was like a channel for cars that weren't going downtown. They're either commuting home or just trying to make through Main Street, but they weren't engaged with downtown. And then in the summer of 2020, I had the occasion to drive down the length of Main Street, and it just blew me away with every outdoor dining area full of people. And it just seemed like there was so much energy that I had not seen in my time. And then we hear concerns that, well, people aren't using the outdoor capacity this past summer. And we were among those because we just could not find enough staffing. This summer of 2021 was incredibly difficult to find enough people to service our outdoor seating. So we are redoubling our efforts this spring in anticipation that we are going to have a robust summer and fall season. The other thing is the Performing Arts Center, when it opens this fall, excited about the potential of that to bring people downtown for the first time, Because one thing I noticed in the 2020 summer, thanks to competent leadership locally and statewide, we emerged from these shutdowns before Massachusetts. We got exposed to a lot of new customers.
30 seconds.
And now we're having another opportunity with the Performing Arts Center. There's going to be a lot of events coming downtown. And the first experience that those people have when they come downtown is going to determine whether or not they come back. And the other last thing I'd like to make is looking at the future, young urban professionals, attracting them to come and live and work downtown Nashua, having that vibrant community on Main Street, I think is going to help the vision of the master plan and just the future of Nashua. So thank you.
Thank you. David Berry.
Thank you. My name is David Berry. I'm 30 years old, an Army vet, born and raised here in New Hampshire. Been employed for over 5 years over at San Francisco Kitchen here downtown. The first point I would like to make is that this is currently not a surviving COVID issue anymore. This is a matter of COVID recovery, recovering from the financial issues that have been caused by the disease. Second thing I would like to point out is that with the skyrocketing gas prices that we've seen, I've seen over 85 cents happen in the past 5 days, a lot more people are going to stop driving. A lot more people are going to start walking. So by having less parking available downtown, more people walking invites a lot more people to enjoy the other businesses besides the restaurants and bars that are there. As far as the price of using the barriers, I understand there's a cost on that for the town, which gets put onto the taxpayers and such. Now, I thoroughly believe that the cost of that should be evenly divided based off the number of parking spots each restaurant or establishment might use. The last meeting I attended, there was a proposal that each parking space should be charged $10,000 to whatever restaurant or bar or location might be using them. I believe that to be laughable. That would completely cripple the point of having them out there to help alleviate the burden of COVID put on us. As far as the length of time extended, I believe that should also be shortened, as does the owners of SFK. We believe that the only time that we truly need it are between the months of May and October. Any time going beyond or before that is just unnecessary and a waste of taxpayers' time, money, and causing unnecessary burden with the traffic. And the last thing I would like to point out is that a lot of people have brought up the parking issue. I believe earlier we established that we are only effectively using about 50% of our parking. One point I think that is not shown was the parking garages. I parked at the parking garage at Factory Street since I started working downtown. Every single time I've ever gone up onto the higher floors, I see more than half of those floors empty, especially the higher floors. If we open those up for more paid public parking, I believe that would help alleviate a lot of that particular burden. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. That concludes all the people who have signed up. Has anybody in the audience that did not sign up that is wishing to speak? Please come forward. Seeing none. Oh, yes, okay.
Hello, my name is Ruben Gomez. Live in 262 Lake Street. I'm home with my wife in San Francisco Kitchen. I just want to say, we work hard many years. I'm in the Air Force. I'm still active. 18 years. Proud servant the country, my country, our country. We work hard, try to get something for our family, me and my wife, and we're able to buy San Francisco Kitchen. Then COVID happens. Then we survive. And like they say, we're recovering now. So I'm in favor of the barriers. I'm in favor of the outdoor dinner, and I appreciate it if you guys consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Anybody online that did not have the opportunity that's wishing to speak? Now is the time. Yes, did you want to speak, sir? Please come forward.
Thank you very much. Oscar Velasquez from Friction Multimedia. I have a business here in 194 Main Street. During the years, since the barriers were been up, traffic has been a little tough. I live on the north end, so getting towards Main Street, but nothing gives me more pleasure than to put that aside and see fellow business owners downtown, especially being able to go into Fratello's and support these businesses, going to Tostados and all the businesses downtown. I'm willing to, see past that, and I hope that everybody can too. And also as in the comment for the barriers to being able to be repainted because they look ghetto. We should show a little bit of more respect for the individuals that took the time to paint those and give them the recognition that they deserve, because that's just distasteful. Thank you very much, and I hope that we can all come into a conclusion and a higher ground and a good understanding to be able to be successful and grow together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Again, final call in the House. Final call for Zoom. Okay, seeing none. Basically, from people we've heard, 26 testimonies in favor, 17 against, if you're keeping a scorecard on the sheet. What we will do at this time, I will close the hearing on 022-008, relative seasonal road closures and eliminated certain on-street parking for extended outdoor dining and other non-vehicle use. I will assign it to a work committee. The work committee will meet at a time certain. Donna, did we come up with a particular date on that?
If you would like to piggyback with the finance meeting next week on the 16th?
It'll be work with the finance meeting on the 16th. It was discussed on the 17th, but I have other obligations.
Here, here.
That particular day that I have to reflect upon the kindness of my patron St. Patrick.
Yes, you do.
So I hope that you understand that. So what is it again? Can the clerk make the announcement?
Sure. The meeting will be next Wednesday, March 16th, following finance meeting, which starts at 7. So 7:30 around.
Okay, and I'm going to recognize Alderman Dow.
Yeah, do we need to make a motion to table to that meeting?
Yes.
I'll entertain that.
I'll make a motion, we table it until the meeting on the 16th.
Okay. All those in favor of tabling, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is tabled. Thank you, Alderman Dow. Alderman Clevens, was that your
That was
parliamentary as well?
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Alderman Clevens. Okay, back to the agenda. Tabled in committee.
There is none.
General discussion. There seems to be, I think we heard enough. Well, Alderman Clay.
I'm sorry to belabor this meeting, but I do want to make a comment. Excuse me, could you keep it down?
Folks, ladies and gentlemen, if so kindly, if there's communication, we're still in session, but if you want to have communications, please step outside and that would be good. Or keep the din to a nice roar. Alderman Clay, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. There was a comment that was made during the public comment relative to Lock Street and I won't go into what the negative comment was, but the bottom line is Lock Street hasn't been paved simply because we are waiting to get the grant that was given to us in, I think it was 2018. It is slowly coming through. We are slowly working on it, and Matt knows about it Director Sullivan knows about it as well as others. We are slowly working towards it. It will get better. It's going to be absolutely beautiful when it's finished. And I just want the public to know that we are not ignoring Lock Street. That was the first thing I did when I became elected. So I do take offense when people speak to it about that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman King. Alderman Moran.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out just a couple of things. I believe Mr. Susi, I believe is also a county commissioner, may have misrepresented how you can use $60 million of ARPA funds from the county. This is the city. The city does not have $60 million of ARPA funds. I serve on the executive committee for the county, and the the voting delegates decide how the money is spent, not the commissioners. They get to, make the budget and then send it to us for approval. But I would encourage Commissioner Susi to put his money where his mouth is and present a plan in which he can send that money here, rather than just say we have $60 million.
Thank you. If the aldermen can just stand by, I think the mayor would like to jump in while the matter is fresh.
I want to just add to what Alderman Moran said, which is that the city is getting 16 million, 1/6. The county is getting 80 million, 80. So,
thank you for clarifying that.
So the county could help us considerably if they wanted to.
That's right.
Very good. Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am wondering. I know that you kind of briefly went over the working session, but by announcing who was on it. But I was wondering if you could kind of take a few minutes to explain to the committee and to the public who's still watching, maybe on TV, what we're looking to do, what the goals are, who's on the committee, and what the outcome should be.
And thank you for the opportunity, Alderman Clemmons. The intention in calling the meeting tonight was we did hear in a lot of emails that the public did not have the opportunity. But I asked the question, opportunity to what? Everybody has an opinion, and I think we all received emails on opinion, but nothing in the technical in nature. So a lot of work was done in work sessions with Director Cummings, partially with Director Sullivan, myself, other aldermen got involved, taking each individual email, we read them all, and incorporated a workable plan that we came up to. We talked to the fire department, and they are an active participating partner in this. We talked to the police department. There was no public meetings. There was a cry for 91A documents and everything. These are just like every single meeting that goes on in City Hall where we work together in a work group to come up with something. And we did. I think we came up. I'm not saying it's the best plan in the world. That's up for you, ladies and gentlemen, to make that particular decision. But we came up with something that you can make a decision on. And basically that's where we're at. So with that in mind, why the work session? What we're going to do is reconvene and to make sure, because I think Director Cummings and myself would admit that we are not omnipotent, and if we're looking for any input, this is why we ask even some of the stakeholders. Mary Lou Blaisdell of Design Wiz with the, I'm skipping my mind of the organization she belongs to. Downtown Improvement Committee, thank you.
Since the dawn of Main Street.
And Paul Shea, who just recently left his tenure because of the election into Public Works, but yet Public Works still needs to be, they're doing a lot of barrier works, and it's good to have them on representation on that. And with this past experience of GAD, makes them, I think, a valuable resource. And at the same time, very excited to have Ms. Carden Smith to be involved with this process as well. And I think between working with the two different groups, I think we're going to come up with something. It's not going to be perfect, but I think it's going to meet the muster of the expectations of what the people want. Alderman Clemmons.
And just to follow up, thank you for the explanation. I think it's a good idea. I think it was very good that we have a representative of the block that had the strongest opposition to the barriers. We have a representative speaking for that group on there, and I think that I think what I'm hoping is that if there is other things, you know, that we discussed them at that meeting, and we come up with a good plan. I think if Commissioner Susi, like was stated, thinks that the county delegation would go along with some money to make this project even better, I think that would be wonderful. And so I would invite him to come to the meeting, you know, if and speak if he has any information about that. And I think, you know, overall, I look forward. What I heard tonight was, I heard some folks tonight say that they were definitely against the barriers and they don't want them. But the majority of people that I've heard from after, and this is after the plan was presented, recognize that there should be some sort of compromise. And so I'm hoping that the work group can come together with what will be a good compromise. And I appreciate all the work that has gone into our template, if you will, which is what's in front of us now. And with that, I'll yield the rest of my time. So thank you.
I just want to respond to you, Alderman Clemmons. Keep in mind with the work group, the public can come to the meeting. It is a public meeting. However, there's not going to be any public input. It's going to be people assigned to the work session. So even though if we did invite Commissioner Susi to respond, but I think the position that you brought up, or the situation that you and Alderman Melbourne brought up, I think I would like to refer that particular matter to the mayor's office, and I think that would probably, the question would better be asked, if there is funding available. You know, Commissioner Susi is a Nashua resident. I hope he's, you know, I'm not accusing, I hope if there's funds available for Nashua, I hope he thinks of his, you know, duty to think of Nashua first and get those funds. And I'm sure that I'll give him the opportunity to try to do that. So
Thank you, Mr.
I
Chairman.
think
Thank
we'll
you.
refer that to the mayor's office on that particular thing. Thank you. Excuse me, we'll get with Alderman Theobald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple quick things. You know, speaking of Commissioner Susi, he did mention that telegraph pole. You know, I get concerned with those polls. It was 3,000 people out of 90, and we don't have any demographics. And I don't know when it was taken, who got, you know, what segment of the population. And just as criticism was leveled at Mr. Shea on the Great American Downtown Survey that he did, same thing. I think we got to be careful with those surveys in general, and I just wanted to point that out. Another thing that I think if you're hardcore against the barriers, hardcore against the outdoor expanded dining, you're not going to help with a compromise. You need to have an open mind to be able to add to that. And so the people that were just up here banging their fists going, I'm against it no matter what, is not going to help us come up with a workable solution for everybody on Main Street. So I appreciate everybody coming out, even the people who are against it. I think we need to hear those, and I think we need to hear compromises, and I think we need to hear people who are for it. So I thank everybody. I know most of them have left, but I thank them for coming tonight. And the last thing, and Oscar kind of stole my thunder, and then Alderman Klee, you know, a couple things. So when after the election, there was an alderman-elect, I won't say who it was, mentioned that downtown was looking like a war zone. And we heard it again tonight. We also heard ghetto twice tonight. Inner city. I've seen it on Facebook multiple times. It's a ghetto. People who say it's a ghetto or a war zone have never, ever seen one or been in one. Because I'll tell you, take a look at what's going on in Ukraine right now. And tell me if Nashua, when they had the barriers up, looked like a war zone. I don't think so. I don't think so. And on the graffiti, you know, maybe it's not my cup of tea either, but that doesn't mean it's not art. Art's in the eye of the beholder, right? Everybody feels differently about art. Would I love it all to be Monets or Picassos or Renoirs or any of those people? Of course. Maybe even a Dilbert comic, right? But that's not what everybody's going to like, okay? And so I'm for the compromise of, you know, doing something different with it so it's more amenable to everybody. But to call that stuff ghetto is just not being cool. And to Oscar's point, thank you for bringing it up. It wasn't cool. And I wish more people would stop calling that ghetto or war zone. And Alderwoman Kelly called it out to somebody in email this week as well. And I just think it's the wrong look for Nashville. We want to go forward. We want to be diverse. And I think every time I hear that, I cringe. We have to be more diverse. We have to be more open to compromise and just different types of people. And that's it. I could speak all night on that, but thank you.
Alderman Moran.
Just before the mayor interrupted me, I had a couple more things. I'm sorry.
I was trying to just clarify the situation.
One, jumping off of Alderman Tebow and what Oscar said, I grew up in public housing. I'm very used to people using that term. I find it ignorant. I find people who use that word ignorant. I was disheartened to hear an elected official use that term today. And I can only imagine how it is for a person of color to hear that word, because it has a different connotation rather than someone who looks like me. And, you know, growing up in the projects, that's what I would call them, you know, elitists use that word. And I don't find that looking down on a fellow citizen is a national quality. And I think we should continue to call it out when it happens. Fratello's is leaving, and if you're a business owner like I am, you know that that was a scapegoat piece in the Telegraph, and I am glad to hear that someone's moving right in and who's dedicated to the city rather than someone jumping ship and having to worry about their investors in other locations and rather blame it on parking than own their own mistakes when they run a business. And then the last thing I have is how do we figure out who's going to be on this committee, on the working group?
I did as chairman by Mason's Rules of Order, Section 4.
No, we're both chairmen, though.
I'm supersede.
Is that?
Thank you.
That's all I needed to know.
Thank you.
But if we could talk about it in the future, I would appreciate it.
Or explain it,
Oh,
or
yes.
let us know who's on it.
Yeah, just for transparency.
Okay, but you were issued Masons.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I was.
Alderman Lopez.
With regards to the process and the concerns that were raised, I do want to point out, I was not in favor of the plan presented in December and was pretty vocal about it. And this is a very different plan in terms, I mean, okay, it's the same downtown, everybody, it's the same map, but there are major changes. And I mean, it sounds trite, but even the colors represent different types of parking, different approaches taken. I think some good work was done on it. I was very much concerned about the comments made by the fire department, and to some extent what the police were indicating too, although that didn't concern me as much as a fire truck being stuck in the way. And I understand that a lot of work has been done there, and I also understand that a large part of the comments they made were with regards to needing an update to their signaling equipment, which we still should probably be looking at. So I think a lot of work has been done. I think the criticisms of it happening, you know, without the public present is not fair, because the infrastructure committee really didn't exist after that last meeting until half of the board was sworn back in for a new term, and the other half was sworn in for the first time. So there wasn't really any legislative body to meet, to organize, to do things. So sure, Director Cummings was just waiting for direction or input or ideas to come from somebody, but we weren't around. We didn't exist in this present legislative form. So should no work be done? Should there be no progress made at all until we check in with the handful of citizens who, I mean, not all of them even own businesses downtown, but feel like they should be privy to every interaction and every exchange and able to deny, criticize, or obstruct those things? There needs to be transparency, but there really doesn't need to be interference. There is a point where we have paid Director Cummings and Director Sullivan and Chief Buxton Rhodes, Chief Buxton and other professionals to work in their field and to do what they're supposed to do and to do their jobs. And we need to let them do that. So there are times, I think, where it's entirely appropriate for city staff to meet with city staff and for an alderman who chairs a committee to participate in those meetings, since he's going to have to figure out how to present it to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And I think it was pointed out to us that there's a lot of statistics and negative speakers on this date and on this date and on this date, but it's also worth pointing out that a lot of those speakers were pre-baked. They were given talking points. They were reached out to over that period where we weren't doing things. We were organizing ourselves and figuring out who was going to be on what committee and what was going on. And that was in the absence of the actual plan. No new plan or no new ideas had been formally presented to the public. And that's where a lot of the misinformation is coming from. People were working with what they thought would happen. Other people were working with what they think could happen. And the appropriate time to bring it to the public is when you have a draft and when you have a chance to actually say, this is what we could do differently and this is how we've learned from our past years, which I think has been done here. I think we've engaged stakeholders where they need to be engaged and where it's appropriate. And some stakeholders are a little more engaged, not necessarily in the overall downtown picture or the overall health of all the businesses, but in their businesses and what their concerns are. I do know that as the alderman for Ward 4 and representing downtown, I interact with a lot of the downtown merchants and a lot of the restaurant owners by pure virtue of living 2 blocks, 3 blocks away. So when the petition came out and the businesses were identified as opposed to this, I was very surprised because at least one of them had asked me the day before the petition was released to make sure that the outdoor dining was appropriate for their business. Another one was literally running a petition of their own and was represented on this petition as being opposed to it. I found that somewhat suspect. So I asked around, I found out from multiple places, I checked with some of the owners, and not everybody who's on that petition actually is a business owner or even represents it. And what I found was there were some very passionate people who were going around to businesses and making their case out of passion without necessarily reading the room and recognizing that some of the people they were making the case to really didn't want to hear it, and they really didn't want them in their businesses. And they were willing to sign whatever to get them out without recognizing that they were going to be represented further than they were intending. That kind of passion is very helpful and very useful when we're productively trying to figure out how to solve problems, but I think it needs to be directed and it does need to be guided. And that's where the process is just as important, where you need to have a plan or an idea of what you're going to present to the community before you get them all fired up over something. So I'm very happy that we're going to have ongoing work on this and that we are going to have a committee or subcommittee formed to continue working on this because things change downtown. I don't think even when Director Cummings made this, he probably didn't anticipate gas prices flying through the roof. There's any number of situations that are going to come up over the next couple of months that we do need to address. There is, as much as it's probably politically unpopular to say, there is the likelihood that some COVID variant will pop up again and that it will pose such a risk to our first responders or our ICU that we have to make a move or have to do something. And that's just an example of something that could happen because it happened the last 2 years. So I think having a group that is transparent and is empowered to represent other voices is going to be key in this. And I think that's how our downtown is going to thrive.
Parliamentary inquiry, we table that motion. I don't want to keep any alderman from speaking, but we shouldn't be debating that motion. It's on the table and it's not up for debate right now. So if anybody has anything else, that's fine, but I don't think we should be talking about that particular motion.
Point is taken. Thank you, Alderman. The mayor did wish to speak. I'll recognize the mayor.
Now, very quickly, because I realize the hour, but Alderman Lopez mentioned the Opticom system. I've been informed, educated by Chief Buxton, totally obsolete. And out of not even working, totally. So we met today with fire, police, with others to talk about proposing to you a new system that employs totally new technology, would work far better, and would help all the emergency services, particularly fire, but potentially police as well, and possibly even ambulances. It's a multi-layered priority type technology, and probably would help us with Main Street to some degree, even with the outdoor dining situation. Anyway, since it came up, we will be coming with a plan. We're going to meet with a vendor and kind of figure out what the cost is and who the best vendor is. Tim was there. Lisa was there. Bill Mansfield and others. So, anyway, just to keep you up to date.
Very good.
Can I just respond real quick?
Alderman
I won't be
Lopez, keep in mind of the hour, please.
I would just suggest talking to Commissioner Susi to see if we have to be the ones to pay for it.
Yeah, well. Thank you. Alderman Cappy.
I don't want to be a dead horse, but when will you be announcing the work group, or how will you be doing that? So
How does the work group?
when will you be announcing who's on the work group?
I still, excuse me, I'm sorry.
When will you be announcing who's on the work group? Is it infrastructure and PDC plus those three?
Yes, the work group is a combination of infrastructure and PDC.
Okay.
Let me clearly say, what has been our tradition in the past, I know there's new aldermen, but what has been the tradition at the past, when the president of the Board of Aldermen assigns it to a particular committee, she will designate which committee is the lead committee, and, when we combine the two committees. It's been our operational procedure, and correct me, Madam President, if I'm wrong, that chairman of that particular committee is the lead of that particular group, and then calls everything and has full authority and exercises the chair. Now, the other chair basically works as a member of that committee and, to assist in the chair as possible. There isn't really a theoretical co-chair, but more under the direction of one chair. But the two chairs do work together to coordinate to the end result that what comes up. And that's been our procedure, right, Madam President? Yes, okay, thank you.
I appreciate the clarification, and with that, I was a little confused by the meeting tonight because it worked like a public hearing, but it was a committee meeting. Committee meetings, based on the city charter, work differently than public hearings. And then we voted on passing an ordinance, which committees don't vote on passing, before the public even got to speak, which is not typical of committee meetings generally. And so that was super confusing, so confusing that I didn't say yes or no.
No, it
because I was
wasn't really
confused about.
confusing if you read Mason's, which basically gives a lot of power to the chair, And basically, as when we discuss any procedural vote or motion or anything else like that, and I can refer to get it reconfirmed via legal counsel if you so wish, or you may.
I could
equally as well too. But basically, to discuss anything, you just can't discuss it out of the blue. We're a legislative body, so we have to have a pending motion that is sitting there before us. This is the same way the state of New Hampshire, we operate in the legislature. We don't work on blank motions or anything else. So again, whenever a motion is made, it always comes down to, by Mason's is very forward, which basically comes out an affirmative motion, is usually what is first introduced, and then that could be debated. Now, as what Alderman Dow did recommend in the, I forgot, but he is correct, in the parliamentary procedure, was to table it. The motion can always change. Once something gets in and fails, it can go to a subsequent motion. The motion is, the debate is still there, but it can go to a subsequent motion.
But the first motion that Alderman Moran presented was for passage.
Right.
It was her recommendation.
But that's only to open it for debate. I mean, if you want to discuss this all night in front of the chamber, I will.
I'm just curious. We didn't vote on it.
But if you want to discuss it.
We did vote on it.
We did vote on it.
Yeah. We did vote on it.
Mr. Chair,
We
if I
just
may.
tabled it.
Yeah.
No.
I don't want to put words in my colleague's mouth, but as soon as Alderman Moran made the motion, you did say all those in favor, and there was a handful of yays. I was confused about the process, so I didn't say anything. But
If I
immediately
did,
after the motion was made.
I think I did stipulate, and let me stipulate, my intentions was not to hold any vote. Because what my goal is, and has been my goal, is to go this to a subcommittee. If I did it out of a...
That's why I believe the confusion came. I assumed it was an error, which is why I didn't say anything.
Don't worry about it. But the thing is, I did it inadvertently. The thing is to get it into a work committee. Let's stay focused on the goal, and that is to stay with this and, the procedure. This was I have to say, I commend you all. In my 6 years of being an alderman, I never seen anything so contentious that came up before than this particular. For you new aldermen, you broke in pretty good. You did well, and I thank you for that. But this was one of the big, I think, looking at the more seasoned aldermen, this was something that was very, very different. It does happen from time to time, but I think we got through it. We did allow the public to speak, which was our primary objective tonight, and we did succeed. Alderman Clements.
Mr. Chairman, just so that for the comfort of the new alderman and to clarify the record, I'm going to make a motion that just clarifies that no action was taken. So my motion is to clarify that no action was taken by this committee and that we affirm that we have tabled it to the next meeting. And that is my motion. And briefly speaking on that, if we all vote in the affirmative of that, it clarifies what happened earlier.
I'll entertain that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Alderman Dow.
Motion to adjourn?
Outstanding. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we have the TV time?
10:56.
10:56, thank you.